As a grand finale, a large wooden structure representing the morning star was ignited by fireworks. As it burned into the night, the fire seemed like a warm heart, keeping the pre-Christian culture of the Baltic alive.
Simon Broughton with our last story for today. I'm Pascal Harter. The producer was Polly Hope. We'll be back again next weekend here on the BBC World Service.
That was the BBC programme from our own correspondent. I'm Saroja Coelho. Have a great day.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. We're live in downtown Winnipeg on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube this morning. It is -1 in the city of Winnipeg, and it's a little frosty out there. You're going to find that whether you're walking or you're going to have a little layer of frost out there. So take it easy. Could be a little bit slick. And we do, in fact, have a winter storm watch in effect for southern Manitoba. This is for Portage, La Prairie, Headingley, Brunkill, Morden, Winkler, Brandon, Neepawa, Killarney, Melita, Verdon, Dauphin, Minnedosa, that southwest corner, looking to get some more freezing rain, snow, and strong winds over western Manitoba. This will really move in tonight to our province, and it's going to continue for the next couple of days. Here in the city of Winnipeg, we start with a mix of sun and cloud and a high of 5, so a bit of a different story here. Good morning to the team. Good morning to Corey Funk. Corey directs the show, and we'll be covering the commute. Good morning to Abby Adiyemi. Hey, Abby. Abby is on the other side of the glass, giving you a wave on YouTube. Abby is our technical producer and covers the weather on air. Good morning to Kevin Nipatable, who's also over there with Abby, saying hello. Kevin is our YouTube producer. And Heather Wells is here also at 2 minutes to 6 with our news headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, the ball didn't quite go Winnipeg's way in BC Place yesterday. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers losing their third straight Grey Cup game to the Toronto Argonauts last night. 41-24, the decisive score in favor of the Argos. We're going to hear a little bit more from some Bombers players and fans coming up. As well, the trial of 2 men accused of smuggling migrants across the Canada-U.S. border begins today in Minnesota. The men are charged in the freezing deaths of an Indian couple and their 2 young children in January 2022, found near the Canada-U.S. border near Emerson. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 6:30.
All right. Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
We will have all morning to opine what happened with the Bombers. We're going to hear from a fan in Vancouver that was there and watched the loss. We're also going to hear from some of the Bombers post-game. So we'll start the first hour with some of that. Corey's busy listening to all the tape coming back from BC. And our reporters in BC, Mike Arsenault and Gavin Axelrod, Mike's going to join us actually a little bit later in the program. In addition, this morning, we're going to talk more about Portage and Main as we prepare for the reconstruction. Let's go back and look at the history.
Today on Q.
I'm Talia Schlanger sitting in for Tom Power. Irish actors and musicians are really having a moment right now, and you can count Eve Hewson among them. She's the star of the hit series Bad Sisters, and she'll tell you about seeing Irish culture celebrated around the world.
I was always the one in class making fun of the teacher because someone had to.
Q. This morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. There is an alarming rise in deepfake pornography targeting young Canadians. Deepfakes are created using artificial intelligence, altering real photos to make them explicit. As Ellen Morrow reports, Canadian law enforcement agencies say the cases can be very difficult to investigate.
These were the messages that I got.
16-year-old Ruby was targeted with an explicit deepfake. Someone she didn't know took a fully clothed photo she had posted on social media and used AI to make Ruby appear topless.
There was nothing I could do to prevent it. It just happened. And then I was filled with a lot of anger.
The Canadian Centre for Child Protection describes deepfake porn as a growing threat. 4,000 of these images were reported to the centre last year alone. Lindsay Lobb is a director there.
Because of the availability of these tools that are often even made available for free, this has continued to grow and evolve and continue to be a problem.
The altered images are considered child pornography, but investigating them can be challenging, with unknown perpetrators sometimes operating outside of Canada.
It's Definitely by far the most complex type of investigations.
Corporal Heather Bangle is with Alberta's Internet Child Exploitation Unit. She says deepfakes are being used to extort minors for money.
The more I learn about AI and deepfakes, this is going to be a nightmare.
Someone who I do not know has this picture of me where I really do look naked.
But as far as Ruby knows, the deepfake of her was never posted publicly. Her goal now, raising awareness.
What's still being taught around cybersecurity, to be safe, don't take nude photos. But now it's an entirely other ballgame.
Ellen Morrow, CBC News, Toronto.
You can see Ellen's full report tonight on The National or stream it on The National's YouTube page. There's also more on this story on our main page at cbcnews.ca. The European Union's foreign policy chief says the EU should follow the United States and allow Ukraine to use weapons to strike deep inside Russia. Here is Josep Borrell.
I continue believing this is what has to be done. I hope member states will agree on that.
France is one of the EU's biggest military powers. It says it will consider also allowing Ukraine to hit targets inside Russia. But Ukrainian MP Maria Ionova told the BBC her country needs more.
Missiles are not the silver bullet against our common enemies. When we are talking about this permission, yes, we appreciate, but that will not bring a victory, as we really need strategy, and that is why air shield above Ukraine. More trainings, more Western military instructors in Ukraine.
The Kremlin says if Western weapons are fired deep into Russia, that will usher in a new round of tension, and Russia will treat it as though NATO has directly joined the war. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has a packed agenda today in Rio de Janeiro. He's there for the start of the G20 summit. And there are some important issues to discuss as he sits down for one-on-one meetings with global leaders. Karina Roman has the details.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau will have bilateral meetings today with the leaders of Mexico, Italy, the UK, Japan, and the US. There's no shortage of issues to talk about. First on the agenda for the meeting with Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum will likely be the impending renegotiation of the Canada-US-Mexico Free Trade Agreement, especially considering Trudeau has not ruled out cutting Mexico out of talks if it doesn't come on side with tariffs on China-made electric vehicles. Ukraine will be top of mind for sit-downs with Italy, the UK, and of course the US, as they wonder whether the reported decision by the US to lift restrictions that had blocked Ukraine from using weapons provided by the US to strike deeper into Russian territory will buy Ukraine enough time to make headway in the war before Donald Trump possibly reverses the new policy once in the White House. When Trudeau meets with U.S. President Joe Biden, they will likely also talk about how to prepare for a Trump presidency and the conflict in the Middle East. But it might also be a moment of farewell, much like when Trudeau and Barack Obama met at the G20 in 2016. Except at that time, Trudeau was the new face, and now he is a veteran at the summit table. Karina Roman, CBC News, Rio de Janeiro.
Donald Trump continues to build his cabinet as he prepares to re-enter the Oval Office next year. The president-elect has been raising eyebrows with some of the choices for his administration. But Trump does not appear to be backing down. He is adding even more controversial names to his list of key advisors. The CBC's Richard Madden joins me now from Washington. And Richard, it seems that Donald Trump is continuing to make some decisions that many are calling questionable. What is the latest?
Yeah, some of them are definitely raising eyebrows, as you said, but I suspect that's by design since Donald Trump promised to shake up the system if he won the election. Now, his latest pick, Brendan Carr to head the Federal Communications Commission. That's basically America's version of the CRTC. It regulates licenses for TV, radio, and internet pricing. Now, Carr is a big critic of big tech, saying he wants to dismantle Google, Apple, and Microsoft for censoring free speech. Carr is also friends with Trump ally Elon Musk and recently blasted the agency for denying some $900 million in subsidies for Musk's Starlink company. But compared to the other nominees, Carr's confirmation could be one of the smoother ones. Here's House Speaker Mike Johnson.
This is what I'll say about the nominees that the president has put forward, is that they are persons who will shake up the status quo. And I think what the American people have believe and what they've delivered with the mandate in this election is a demand that we shake up the status quo. It's not working for the American people.
No, President-elect Trump has already suggested networks ABC, NBC, and CBS should lose their broadcast licenses for being unfair to him. And if that's the case, Brendan Carr would be in charge of pulling the plug.
What is Trump saying about his other controversial picks?
Yeah, it's full steam ahead. Trump is reportedly not backing down. His defense pick, Fox News' Pete Hegseth, is accused of paying a woman who accused him of sexual assault in a settlement. His attorney general, Matt Gaetz, accused of having an affair with a minor. Tulsi Gabbard under scrutiny for being friends with dictators and siding with some of America's adversaries. Now, these three nominees appear to be careening towards a major confirmation clash in the Senate among Republicans, and it could be a major test of Trump's intentions when he takes office.
Thank you, Richard.
Thanks.
The CBC's Richard Madden in Washington. Workers at the zoo in New Delhi use hoses to spray down the animal enclosures. They are concerned the smog is making it hard for them to breathe. The air in the city is thick and toxic. Schools have been closed and construction has been stopped. India's government has also limited the number of trucks going into the capital as the air quality worsens. Data from Swiss group IQ Air shows New Delhi ranking as the most polluted city in the world. It says the concentration of hazardous matter in the air could cause cardiac issues and disease. A coroner's inquest begins today into the death of a black man in Ottawa. He died after a violent altercation with police 8 years ago. And this inquest starts while there are growing concerns among lawmakers and others. It's being held virtually, and the trend has some questioning the process. The CBC's Guy Kenville explains.
I certainly had some misgivings about it, and I expressed those.
Lawrence Greenspan is the lawyer for the family of Abdi Rahman Abdi, a black man who struggled with mental health issues and whose 2016 death, a day after his violent arrest by police officers, sparked outrage in Ottawa and beyond. Greenspan is used to addressing juries in person, so when he learned the weeks-long inquest into Abdi's death would take place by video conference,
It struck me as being a process that was foreign to me. But
the Abdi inquest is one of 4 that Ontario's Office of the Chief Coroner has scheduled for the rest of this year, and they're all slated to be virtual. The coroner's office says that allows juries to hear from the best expert witnesses, no matter where they live, and also for the full participation of families. But Mackenzie Peterson says her recent experience with a virtual inquest was isolating and impersonal.
That would have been filled. My dad had so many friends and family that loved him and wanted to be there.
Peterson's father was shot by Hamilton police in 2020. She was looking forward to seeing the officers in person, but she says her camera was turned off during the inquest earlier this month until her grandmother Lucy complained and said,
"Hey, look, if this was happening in the courtroom, you couldn't block our faces. So why are you blocking us from turning the camera on?"
Greenspan says he's willing to give the online format a chance, but hopes it runs smoothly. Guy Kenville, CBC News, Ottawa.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. We're live downtown in our CBC studios, and thanks for joining us. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app, on YouTube, and you might be asking yourself in the city, if you're a sports fan this morning, why can't we manage to win the Grey Cup? We're going to start the show by taking a closer look at last night's Grey Cup game. The Bombers lost. We're going to hear from some of the players, so stay tuned. Of course, there were some unfortunate things that happened during that game as well, including Zach Caleros and that finger injury. Also, this hour on the program, the postal workers walked off the job Friday, as you likely know. That adds to a wave of labor strife this year, disrupting railways, ports, and other sectors. We'll get some insight from a labor expert this hour. And we're also going to hear from the author of a new guide that aims to help families navigate technology use from day one. Stay tuned. Heather Wells joins us first with headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, a Manitoba family is looking for answers after a mother and her 8-year-old daughter were killed in a crash. Sarah and Alexa Unger died after a semi-trailer hit their SUV Friday at a highway intersection near Altona. RCMP believe the driver of that semi failed to stop at a sign before crashing into the SUV. The trial of 2 men accused of smuggling migrants across the Canada-U.S. border begins today in Minnesota. The men are charged in the freezing deaths of an Indian couple and their 2 young children in January of 2022. Officials say the men would bring people from India to Canada and then walk them from Manitoba across the Minnesota border. So we'll hear more about that. We have a reporter in Minnesota at that trial. And that's coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
Now, we have some serious weather to talk about, but Heather, first, why can't we win the Grey Cup?
Man, oh man, you know?
Man, oh man.
It was, I mean, almost from the beginning of the game, you just had this kind of feeling.
You know what? I never underestimate also, Toronto played really well. I mean, my goodness, but never underestimate a quarterback who had to step in for Toronto.
Yeah,
like,
backup
imagine.
quarterback wins it all.
Yeah. But imagine, right, that moment, you're being called up. You would never have expected this. You're called up for the big game. It happened actually when Kevin Glenn, right, broke his arm and then went on. We had that situation. But so in this situation, you can't underestimate that. And he played his heart out. And obviously the plays were working. And then, a lot of turnovers in that game yesterday, though, for us, right?
Yeah, and you mentioned the injury to Zach Collaros' throwing hand.
Yeah.
Like that is, who saw that coming?
So it all went wrong.
Pretty much.
Do we start talking about this, being a Grey Cup, an issue?
Does
Winnipeg
maybe
have an
they're just
issue
hanging on for next year because Winnipeg hosts next year. Maybe they just want to win it here.
I like your bright side. I'm starting to wonder about a curse. Listeners are going to start going crazy saying, don't say that. But let's talk about it this morning if you want. Lines are open. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
788-3205. Some more football talk to come after a disappointing Grey Cup for Winnipeg fans. However, let's talk about other things. Corey Funk, good morning to you.
Good morning.
And good morning to you, Abby Adeyemi.
Good morning.
You want to start with the warning or the day's weather?
Well, something is definitely coming towards western Manitoba starting this evening, and that would continue into Wednesday. We have a storm we're tracking, and this is going to bring a mix of rain, freezing rain, snow, strong winds, and this is going to be, starting with that cold air that will be moving in. We're going to see winds coming from the northwest, very strong. The gusts would get to about 80 kilometers, and these conditions could lead to poor visibility and potential blizzard in a lot of areas. We're looking at snowfall amounts ranging from 15 to 30 centimeters, even higher once the system passes through western Manitoba, which is coming from the eastern side of Saskatchewan. And we hear that this will be bringing some cold front. We're going to be seeing lows in the range of from -5 to -10. So you really want to brace for that. As mentioned, you need to prepare for some cold weather. I think this feels more like November now. This sounds like November to me.
Yeah, I agree.
Mercy.
Looks like we turn this week, yeah.
So it's more like, the calm before the storm. That's what we're going to be experiencing this morning. Right now, -2 in Winnipeg. It is clear outside. Today's forecast for the city, we're going to see a mix of sun and clouds, light winds. The highs would get to +5 today, this morning, though with the wind chill, it's feeling like -5. And then tonight, we'll see that cloud I mentioned would roll in, and then that showers would develop over midnight, and we'll see temperatures drop to around +3. But right now, Winnipeg, we are at -2.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey Funk, what do you know about the commute today?
Yeah, right now there is already is the highways that are the story this morning. There are a couple issues that you may want to keep an eye out for, particularly around Roblin right now. Seeing on Manitoba 501, partly covered highways, which could mean there's a little bit of snow here and there, odd drift or something like that, but also poor visibility being reported around Roblin on the highway. So just heads up there. Looked at a camera, looks like there's some snow going on there. As well up in Thompson, if you're heading west from Thompson toward Lynn Lake on 391, that highway there is being reported as covered with some poor visibility as well. So be careful if you're heading from Thompson to Lynn Lake this morning. If you see anything else going on, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number 204-788-3093.
Well, the Bombers on social media on Facebook are putting up, have a big sign they put up overnight that says, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you to the best fans in the CFL. But those fans might be mighty disappointed this morning, asking, as I just did with Heather there, where did it all go wrong when you watched the Grey Cup yesterday? Fans watched the Grey Cup, and a lot of people who watched the Grey Cup, a lot of people commenting on, the injury to Zach Collaros, the turnovers, and also just the fact that we never seemed to quite settle in. And we lost. Winnipeg Blue Bombers became the first team in 68 years to lose 3 Grey Cups in a row. And I don't know about you, but I really wanted this one for our city. I was kind of excited thinking maybe, if they won, that we'd have a big parade again and fill the streets, which is always just lots of fun as one moment of unity anyway over sport. But we lost to the Toronto Argonauts. The final score 41-24. CBC's Gavin Axelrod is in BC in Vancouver. After the game, he and the other reporters headed to the locker room to hear what some of the players had to say. And he did start by asking quarterback Zach Collaros what actually happened to his hand.
Oh, yeah, just, I don't know if I took a helmet or kind of a hand hit it. It was a little bloody. Had to get some stitches in it and numb it. But, it's not an excuse for our performance tonight. And, I appreciate Ocean, the guys, for letting me try to get it out there.
This is now the 3rd year in a row you're up here talking about a loss in the Grey Cup. Does it feel any worse this time around, or how do you sort of sort through the emotions right now?
Yeah, it feels pretty bad every time, there's just so many people in the locker room that you care for, you develop deep bonds with, put in a lot of time, a lot of work together. So to not have it go your way, in the ultimate game is obviously tough.
Zach, you guys look dialed in, the last couple of weeks, and talked about the turnovers, talked about the mistakes, talked about playing clean football. Does it come down to execution on their side, lack of execution on your side? Like, how do you kind of?
I don't want to take anything away from the Argos. They did a great job. When we watch the tape back, I'm sure that we'll feel like we left some stuff out there. And turnovers are killers, and especially ones that lead to points. So we talk about playing a clean game, complementary football, those things. And we just didn't do a good enough job tonight offensively.
I don't think anybody was surprised to see you come back in. What is your experience playing with a glove? Like, did you feel comfortable throwing the ball deep? Like, did you feel like you?
The glove was fine. It just, for them to put the stitches in the finger, it was a little numb. So the grip was difficult. I told the guys in the huddle, doesn't matter.
I know you got plenty of time to figure this out, but was there a message after the game to the guys? Was there you even have to say anything? What's the mood in there?
Osh spoke a little bit, just kind of about the journey, but nothing's gonna make you feel better tonight. Willie spoke too. So a lot of tears, a lot of guys that care about each other a lot. It's just tough, man.
Bombers quarterback Zach Collaros showing a lot of emotion last night, talking with reporters after losing the Grey Cup. He was talking about Willie speaking there as well. He's talking about defensive end Willie Jefferson, and here's a bit more of what he had to say.
Defense played a good game. We came to play. We was calling out plays. We was getting in quarterback's face. Giving the running back some good pops when he was coming through the hole and things like that, making it hard for the receivers to just go out there and catch the ball. It was a good defensive game. You just got to do more. And a loss is a loss, right? We came a long way, right? This one just hurts a little bit more because it's like, we put in all that work, got here to this game, going against a good Toronto team that we knew we could beat, just came up short.
I was going to ask you as well, Willie, what's it like when you go from 0-4 getting to this game and then for it to end sort of like this?
It's heartbreaking, right? To have such a good team, such a good unit, guys that we built, this camaraderie and stuff with, to come down to the end and the end like that, like, you know what I'm saying, it's sad, right? We wanted it to be a closer game, or vice versa, you know what I'm saying, us pull off on them, but it happened how it happened, you know what I'm saying? We just got to grow from it, you know, get ready to come back next year.
What do you hope some of the guys who haven't been on this stage before maybe take away from this?
The experience, right? You know, that's it, right? You know what I'm saying? Enjoy the week, see what it is, see how hard it is to get here, see how much pride it is for you to be here and play in front of your family, your friends, in front of this big crowd, fans from all over the league, and then just, you know what I'm saying, take it in and just trying to harness that and then just finish, right? You know what I'm saying? That's what we was talking about all week, was finishing. We had a good first half and just couldn't do it in the second half.
CBC's Gavin Axelrod in conversation there with who we just heard, Bombers defensive end Willie Jefferson, after last night's game. So I know they say that there's a learn in every loss, and losses are character building, but this one stings a little bit. Right, Bomber fans? So Bomber fans are writing in this morning directly responding to those thank yous that the team posted, and I think some of these things are really nice from people writing in from Winnipeg. Ken Dodd says, what a year. Thank you. Sheila Mitchell saying, thank you, Winnipeg Blue Bombers, for a fantastic year. Can't wait for next season. And finally, Tony Beta writing in, thanks to the Blue Bombers for representing. We all would have welcomed a different finish, but it doesn't affect our loyalty to the blue and gold. See you next year. Proud to be a 30-year season ticket holder. And in an hour from now, we're going to talk to a fan who was there in Vancouver for the big game.
There's more to community than location. It's about the spaces we share, physically and digitally, the points of view that divide or unite us. Gen Z, let's get to know each other. CBC's Communities in Focus is coming to RRC Polytech's Notre Dame campus November 18th to 29th. Live radio, live streaming, and your point of view. Let's talk. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for details.
6:23 a.m. the time right now. It's mainly clear in Winnipeg. It's -2. We'll have a mix of sun and cloud and a high of 5 today. However, highways around Roblin are partly snow covered, poor visibility, and that's from 511 from Highways this morning. There is a winter storm watch for Westman today, most of southwestern Manitoba. Storms expected to start developing this evening, so we'll keep telling you about it through the morning as we get through Monday here. Well, next on the show, would you hand over your kid the keys to the car without teaching them the rules of the road? Most likely not. The authors of a new guide are wanting you to keep that in mind. As families navigate the digital world, are arguing the same logic should apply to smartphones and social media. To learn more about this, Margot Denome is with us. She's the author of the Family Smartphone Guide, as well as founder of the organization Raising Awareness About Digital Dangers and a former Crown attorney. And she's here to talk about this new guide that's out to help families. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So at what age would this would you pick this up and start understanding it? Tell us a bit about the guide.
Well, so it is designed, as you mentioned, like the driver's handbook, because we all know how important it is for our children to understand the rules of the road. So we can apply the same principle to smartphone use. There's nothing currently like this Family Smartphone Guide on the market, because it's for parents that are contemplating giving your child a smartphone, or even if your child already has a smartphone, because the information contained in it is about the physical, mental, and legal implications of smartphone use, amongst other digital dangers.
How do you build the open communication with your child around tech safety and boundaries, particularly when it comes to teenagers who may not want to share with you?
Well, open communication is everything, and it is an ongoing theme throughout the Family Smartphone Guide, because the conversations need to start early. We need to talk often, and we really need to be that safe place for kids to come to. So I always found, being an Uber driver, which we all double as being parents, making it a tech-free zone so it can be a time to communicate, and reading in the newspaper, being current about, did you know that predators are in the chat rooms for Roblox or Minecraft, or whatever you read that day in the paper. We can talk to our kids at that time. Even if they're not engaged, they can listen and learn.
And does this guide include that? How to have conversations, or how to understand the laws, or what the pitfalls are? Like, can you give us a little bit more about the content?
That is exactly what the guide entails. And because very often as parents, we don't really understand when you hand over the smartphone that there's all kinds of repercussions with that, creating a digital footprint, how to be conscious of that, the physical pitfalls, mental health, and what to do about the anxiety and the depression. And then there's the whole criminal element that, when you hand over a smartphone, kids don't understand that there's cyberbullying implications, voyeurism. There can be online predators, the sextortion. So there's a number of different facets to it that the guide breaks down into bite-sized pieces so that parents and children can understand the implications of smartphone use together.
Why are you passionate about this topic?
I working as a Crown attorney, seeing the results of a lot of things in the courts, and understanding that parents are parenting in unprecedented times right now, and the delayed legislation have left parents and children vulnerable. AI is emerging rapidly and adding a whole new host of risks, and we just really need the education and awareness for parents and children. So I see the Family Smartphone Guide as a proactive educational tool for parents to help protect their children.
This morning in our national news, we're hearing about the uptick now of child pornography online and faces, being used, that you would in that type of material. How do you have those conversations with your children without having them fear being online? Because obviously there's positive reasons to be online. There's all kinds of them.
Well, I don't think this is the thing. We don't want to fearmonger. This isn't about fearmongering. This is a reality, so it's more of a cautionary tale. If your child has the phone, we have to be aware of what can possibly happen. And so I think it has to be a dialogue that you have with your child, because they have to understand the implications of posting their pictures and where those pictures can end up. It's a reality. It's not about fear.
Thanks for your time this morning. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your time.
That is Marco Deneme. She's the author of Family Smartphone Guide. She's also founder of the organization Raising Awareness About Digital Dangers and a former Crown attorney. Time right now is 6:28 a.m. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for joining us here on Information Radio, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube, wherever you're joining us. Just a reminder, if you are someone on YouTube and you watch the show there already, you might as well just take that extra step and subscribe and like our podcast. We'd love it if you'd like the podcast. This is Manitoba. It comes out daily, Monday to Friday, so you can check that out. Some of the highlights from the show and then some new conversation around it. It's mainly clear in Winnipeg. It's -2. Take it easy on the highways in southwest Man, especially up around Roblin. They could be partly snow covered. And even in Winnipeg this morning when you're walking, you might find it a little bit slick underfoot with that light layer of frost from last night. Certainly did feel like we've taken that turn in the weather, as Abby said, into more November conditions that we're used to at this time of year. But it will be pretty decent today again. Sun and cloud and a high 5 in the city of Winnipeg at least. Tomorrow's going to be a really wet one, so we're expecting showers to begin into tonight and throughout tomorrow. We have business news coming up in this morning. Christelle Ramlakan is going to talk about the latest inflation numbers that are set to be released tomorrow. Of course, we in these times, we all lean in every time they're going to come out with an update. So we'll hear from her. And of course, we'll find out this Monday morning what everything is looking like as Canada Post workers continue to strike. Right now, though, your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC.
For the second time in 3 years.
And that is the theme of the day, who's won the Grey Cup. We'll get to that in a moment, but I should tell you first, it is -2. We'll see, as Marcy mentioned, a mix of sun and clouds in Winnipeg today, and still above normal for one more day, a high of 5. And as you were hearing there, no Grey Cup for Winnipeg.
For the second time in 3 years, Toronto is the Grey Cup champion.
The Toronto Argonauts last night on TSN beating the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in the Grey Cup game in Vancouver, 41-24 the final score. It is the third straight time the Bombers have lost the CFL championship. Bombers star Willie Jefferson says it is disappointing.
It's heartbreaking, right? To have such a good team, such a good unit, guys that we built, this camaraderie and stuff with, to come down to the end and the end like that, what I'm saying, it's sad.
Losing the Grey Cup isn't just heartbreaking for the team. Bombers fans are crushed too. Jeff Baccaran was at a watch party at a Boston Pizza.
Whatever game plan they had for Toronto, it just didn't work. It's tough. It's disappointing. It's not the result that we wanted. But, give Toronto credit where credit is due. They came out and they outplayed us in all facets of the game.
And so the Bombers now get set for the next season, hoping to try again to win that championship. And that could happen right here. Grey Cup 2025 is here in Winnipeg. The U.S. trial of two men charged after a family from India died crossing the border from Manitoba in 2022 starts today. CBC's Caitlin Garlick is in Fergus Falls, Minnesota.
Jurors are being summoned from across northwest Minnesota this morning for a chance to decide a case that shocked Manitobans almost 3 years ago. Jagdish and Vaishali Patel and their 11 and 3-year-old kids were found frozen in Manitoba a few meters from the U.S. border in January 2022. Harsh Kumar Patel, no relation to the victims, and Steve Shand were indicted in the case earlier this year. Both pleaded not guilty to several counts related to human smuggling. Shand was arrested near the border with other Indian nationals in his van. Patel is accused of coordinating the smuggling and hiring Shand. Their trial is expected to last 5 days and hear from witnesses, including 2 Canadian forensic pathologists who will speak about the Patel family's autopsies. Caitlin Gowerluck, CBC News, Fergus Falls, Minnesota.
A Manitoba family is looking for answers after a mother and her 8-year-old daughter were killed in a crash. Sarah and Alexa Unger died after a semi-trailer hit their SUV Friday at a highway intersection near Altona. RCMP believe the driver of the semi failed to stop at a sign before crashing with the SUV. Peter Unger is Sarah's father-in-law and Alexa's grandfather.
It shouldn't have happened. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know what he was thinking. You can hear the rumble of the stop sign. Why didn't he respond to that?
Sarah Unger leaves behind a husband and a 10-year-old son. RCMP continue to investigate that crash and say charges are expected. U.S. officials are saying President Joe Biden has now authorized Ukraine to use American long-range missiles to strike targets deep inside Russia. And while this is long-awaited good news for the Ukrainian war effort, most in Kyiv say it comes too late. Here's Ukrainian MP Oleksiy Goncharenko.
It's a pity that it took 1,000 days to make this decision finally, but better later than never. We all understand that President Biden is leaving and we don't know what Trump thinks about it. But in any way, that's a very important step. This will give us possibility to save hundreds of lives.
Senior Russian officials are angry about the decision, but there's been no public response yet from President Vladimir Putin. You can hear the latest on that story as well as other national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. What if your physiotherapist was a robot? It is happening in places in the Interlake as well as Pinnimutang and Lake Manitoba First Nations. A 3-foot-high robot named Wally enters the clinic room with the patient. The healthcare worker joins virtually and is shown on the robot's screen. An assistant also helps out while the robot moves around and gets video of how the patient, moves. Physiotherapist Tim Romanek can make sure the movements and exercises are being done correctly.
Being able to see a person more frequently. Obviously, it's a different environment and a different setup, but it still allows for example, reviewing someone's exercises and also just checking in general to see how they're doing with whatever they've come to physio for.
Romanek says it also cuts costs and travel for people who need care. The tele-rehabilitation program is run by Interlake Eastern Regional Health Authority, the University of Manitoba, and Riverview Health Centre. You can find more news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
On the Bombers and the Grey Cup, I was reading a comment this morning, Heather, that I think kind of exemplifies a little bit what What some people in Winnipeg might be feeling. So I was posting photos, like people in Churchill were standing outside yesterday in front of the Inukshuk with all their bomber gear on.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so I was reposting that saying, I guess it's a tradition for the fifth grade cup in a row. Churchill says, go Bombers. They had this picture of some folks in community. And then Maureen Fitzhenry wrote it on the thread just to follow up and said, meantime, Toronto residents say, yeah, and there was a football game today.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the thing, right? When you're a Winnipeg fan, you feel this disappointment in a different way because you kind of know that in the Toronto market, like it's not the
as
same.
big a deal.
No, it's not the same as on the prairies, right? So yeah, a lot of people writing in this morning, sharing how they're feeling as sports fans. Not only that, but the Jets.
Oh my goodness, yeah, so sad. And that was a game, you're playing the defending Stanley Cup champion team, but yeah, couldn't even score a goal.
All right, then, let's move on. What a difference a week makes, eh? If we go back to see what we were talking about last Monday. Okay, let's get into what's happening in the weather forecast. 6:36 a.m. Chin up, everybody who's a sports fan, and let's get into what's going on here with the weather. Abby's got lots of details.
Yeah, lots of details I got here. For today, we have a mix of sun and clouds in most of the regions. However, I call that a beat of calm before the storm. We have this winter storm watch in effect for Western Manitoba. And starting tomorrow, a low pressure system is going to be moving in. It will begin with rain, but then it will quickly change to freezing rain and snow. Along with this, we'll see some strong winds, which can create they're more like blizzard-like conditions. And if you're like as mentioned in the western Manitoba region, which includes Portage and Main, Henley, Morden, Winkler, Altona, and even the Morris region, get ready for some snowy weather to arrive tomorrow. But talking about today, right now, Winnipeg, it is -2, clear conditions outside. We'll see a mix of sun and clouds, light winds. The highs would get to 5 degrees today, though with the wind chill, it's going to feel like -5. Brandon is sitting at -7. Misty conditions you're seeing there. Today also brings a mix of sun and clouds with light winds, and then we'll get to a high of 2 degrees. Thompson is sitting at -1 and cloudy. Light snow you're experiencing at this time will end this morning, giving way to cloudy conditions, and your high will only get to 1. Further north in Churchill, it is 0 and cloudy. Today we'll see more like an overcast. Some foggy conditions you experienced earlier. Breezy conditions will come with that from the southeast and southwest rather, and your high is similar to Church for Thompson. You get to a high of 1. Dauphin sitting at -2 and clear. Today will be cloudy also. A high of 2 is expected. The wind chill for this morning feels like -10, so brace for that. Gimli sitting at -3 and cloudy. The forecast for the Interlake region calls for a mix of sun and clouds, light winds, and a high of 5. Steinbach sitting at -2 and cloudy. Today you'd get more like a sunny conditions with light breeze and a high of 6 degrees. Morris is sitting at -2, cloudy conditions you're seeing at this time. The forecast for the Pembina Valley region calls for a mix of sun and clouds, light winds, and a high of 6 degrees. And we're just, as mentioned, that winter storm is expected to hit tomorrow. We're going to get rain, turn to freezing rain, and then snow with blizzard-like conditions in most of the areas in Western Manitoba, especially, hitting Brandon, Dauphin, the Morris region. So be prepared for snow, freezing rain, and strong winds onwards. Right now, Winnipeg, we are at -2.
Yeah, and I'm not seeing I'm just being looking at the map here. Oh, yeah, it is. It's widespread. Sorry, I was going to say I wasn't seeing how widespread it was.
It's coming
but yeah.
from the Saskatchewan end.
Yeah, it'll go all the way. Okay, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
I'll tell you something I did see, though.
I'll bring it on.
Okay, let's put this up on YouTube. I think Kevin has this picture. So imagine, when you're sitting in traffic, do you ever get to a light and then you just naturally glance over? I don't know, it's like a natural human interest thing, and you see who's beside you?
Oh.
So I looked beside me, and then I saw this, and then I'm like, what is that? And it took me a second, and then there's a second picture there I think we're going to put up. There it is. So people on YouTube can see what we're looking at. So I found myself in traffic Saturday morning, and Santa Claus was beside me. Now, Santa Claus wasn't there because Santa was saving his appearance for the parade. But Santa's sleigh, I guess it must have been in, maybe it was in repair or something because it wasn't flying. It was on the road.
And I see Frosty on guard.
Yeah, Frosty on guard and the reindeer, and they were all there. And they were beside me in traffic getting ready for the parade. So I guess it must have needed some maintenance. They were taking it to Santa.
For sure.
So it was this lovely, startling moment where I looked over and went, what the? So fun. So hopefully everybody had fun at the Santa Parade this weekend. I know it didn't feel particularly snowy or Christmassy, seasonal out there, but it was, on the other hand, not too bad. A little bit drizzly. I won't say nice, but a little drizzly out there. Kind of a strange day for the parade. Let's get into what's going on in the traffic situation this morning. Corey Funk?
Yeah, here in the city, no major issues to report, but it's the highways right now, particularly if you're around Thompson, either if you're going west towards Wind Lake or going east towards Gillam. Both those highways are being reported as either covered or partly covered with poor visibility. So just be careful if you're hitting the highways from Thompson heading east or west this morning, as well as some poor visibility around Roblin as well today. So on those highways, so might run into some issues there too. Other than that, if you see anything else going on, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. I'll let folks know what you're seeing out there, whether you're walking, biking, or driving. That number, 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
Time for business news. Crystal Ramlakan joins us now. Hello to you.
Hey, good morning, Marcy.
So the latest inflation numbers will be released tomorrow. What are we expecting?
Well, economists are predicting that we'll see a slight uptick, but they say the long-term overall trend will still be downward. So economists polled by Reuters expect the consumer price index to come in at 1.9% for October, up from 1.6% the month before, which was the lowest reading since February of 2021. Now, gas prices were the main reason why September came in so low. Oil dropped to around $65 US per barrel, and oil is expected to be a driver for the increase last month as it came in up to $75 a barrel. Now, experts also expect surging property taxes to be a key driver in the increase, but the softening labor market is expected to reduce the pressure on inflation. Now, that is in contrast to what we've been seeing in the U.S., where there is a robust labor market and inflation actually went up last month. Now, as our two economies diverge, the Canadian dollar has been under pressure, trading at lows not seen since 2020. And so with that weak loonie, and if we see inflation going up, some economists expect to see the Bank of Canada deliver a milder 0.25 percentage point cut next month during the next interest rate decision. But others are still calling for the 0.5 point cut, given the struggling economy overall, and because of how long it takes for interest rate cuts to actually take effect and work their way through the economy.
Let's go to another story. You're talking about labor. We have a full interview actually coming up looking at the landscape. But Canada Post workers, as people know, continue to strike this morning. We could see workers, though, at another national employer also take job action soon.
Yeah, that's right. So some workers at Canadian National Railway are holding strike votes starting today. So Unifor represents about 3,500 workers at the railway, including rail car technicians, mechanics, crane operators, machinists, electricians, and admin employees. And the union says that members are worried about things like job security, compensation, and working conditions. So the union points out that CN Rail has made record profits this year. So it says it's trying to obtain a fair agreement for its workers. Bargaining committees have been negotiating a new collective agreement in Montreal, and that's because the current agreement expires at the end of the year on December 31st. Now, earlier this summer, we saw the Teamsters union that represents other workers at CN go on strike. And now Unifor members are deciding whether to do the same thing. And just like we saw in the summer, a strike could impact shipping and economies across Canada.
And finally, some airline passengers who took WestJet flights at a specific period of time, so this is between 2014 and 2019, could be in for a bit of a windfall.
Yeah, that's right. So some travelers who checked baggage on certain flights may now claim their share of a $12.5 million class action settlement. So anyone who paid a fee for their first checked bag when they shouldn't have been charged has until February to submit a claim. So the settlement will be distributed in the form of WestJet travel credits, though, not cash. And that's going to be after lawyer fees, which will take up 1/3 of the settlement, and a $1,500 honorarium for the plaintiff in this case. Now, the BC Court of Appeal dismissed WestJet's previous efforts to overturn this class action lawsuit in 2022, and the Calgary-based airline ultimately changed the wording in its domestic tariff to remove the mention that one checked bag would be free. Now, any travel credits must be redeemed within 2 years or they will expire if you're eligible for one. So here's a little more details. Anyone who paid for their first checked bag on Canadian domestic flights booked directly with WestJet for travel between October 29th, 2014 and July 29th, 2017 is eligible to submit a claim. And then for international flights, the travel period is from January 6th, 2016 to February 27th, 2019.
Everyone's going back looking at their bookings. And
I know, you have to Google it or search it in your email to see if you had a flight and then if you paid for a bag.
Let's get to markets this morning. What are we seeing there?
So in Europe, markets are lower. Germany is down. The UK is up. France is down. In Asia, markets are mixed. Japan is down. Shanghai is down. Hong Kong is up. Oil is up 36 cents to $67.38 US per barrel. Gold is up $26 to $2,597 US per ounce. And the dollar is slightly up 0.01 of a cent, but it's still at 71 cents US.
All right. Thanks a lot, Crystalie.
Okay, thanks, Marcy.
That's Crystalie Ramlakan from our CBC Business Desk. Thirteen minutes to 7 o'clock. Bit of music now from Chris Ulrich. This is Whiskey in the Piano.
In a dusty old basement, in a dusty old town, miles of prairie sky kissing the ground. It's a rusted out flatbed in an overgrown yard. Hear that whistle cry one more time and think where have the days gone and when did we grow so old? Why did I ever think that this would be different? When our clock winds down, and we rush through the days, and the calendar flies. People come and seasons go, like the ever-changing skies. It's an oil-stained floor in an empty garage. Hear that motor turn one more time. Where have the days gone? And when did we grow so old? Why did I ever think that this would be different? When our clock winds down, no one told me it would be this hard. Letting go a life that I remember fighting for. Stolen horses and a car, and booze in the piano, and finally cut cigar. Close your eyes in that old ragged chair and smile, and think where have the days gone, and when did we grow so old?
Chris Ulrich and Whiskey and the Piano. Chris, by the way, is originally from Lac du Bonnet. His 2017 EP called Moonshine touches on his upbringing there, and he talks a little bit about the town's music teachers, Darcy McLean, David Westall, and Sean Keith, crediting them with getting him on the road to building a career in music. 9 minutes to 7 now on 89.3. I'm Marcy Marcusa. -2 in Winnipeg, mainly clear, misty in Brandon, and -7. Thompson's mostly cloudy and -1. And there's that storm watch, winter storm watch for that'll start tonight, and this will affect most of southwestern Manitoba. Well, next on the show, Canada postal workers are on strike, adding a year of labor unrest, all across the country. So this wave has stretched from ports to railway workers, and some say it reflects tensions between workers and employers overall. The federal government has appointed a mediator in the Canada Post strike. The union, meantime, representing the workers, say the two sides remain far apart on key issues. To talk more about all of this, Anita Chinzer is with us, Associate Professor in the Department of Management at the University of Guelph. Good morning.
Good morning. This weather news does not sound like it's a good day to be out on the picket lines. My heart goes out for those union workers who are out there.
In southwestern Manitoba, for sure, they could be facing some things. Where are we at with the Canada Post strike as of this morning?
So their strike is still on, and there's no delivery of mail or intake of any mail. However, the Labour Minister has appointed a special mediator. It goes by the name Peter Simpson, and Peter Simpson's role here as a special mediator is to try to bring both parties back to the table, understand the issues, use the tools and experiences that he has to try to resolve the issues, and bring in additional research to help support some of the perspectives and show where maybe they may be faulty and maybe where they might be valid, and in an effort to keep the conversation going.
What are the key points of contention?
They're the same pretty much across the board. So it's this idea on the surface, the union is asking for fair wages and job security and the ability to retire with dignity. And on the surface, this sounds great. Yeah, of course we should do this. But when we dig past this, it's really this issue that Canada Post has been losing money for the last 6 years. They've lost $3 billion. And they're not taxpayer funded. So there is this concern about, are they going to be able to survive with the existing business model? They're looking to change their business model. And with that, they want to absorb more technology and use more part-time workers on a 7-day-of-the-week delivery model, and also try to reduce their labor cost by giving inflation plus a little bit wage increases. But the union wants to improve security conditions for their employees. The union wants 23% wage increase over the next 4 years, whereas the employers that have offered 11.5%. The union wants paid meal and rest breaks. They want to increase the amount of medical leave, and they also want protections against technology changes. So they're quite far apart on these issues.
It's almost, it's a pretty critical example, though, of what happens with delivery systems across the board in this country. You know, it begs all of us to think about the mail as a service and what it means in our lives against other, delivery services that have taken a chunk out of Canada Post service and also just followed the ball and how globally everything's changing and shifting. And then you have employees saying, we're still here doing the work and we deserve more to be doing this work. There's been a handful of these labor disputes this year, of course, as I said. What is driving all of it?
What's driving this is actually, a couple of big factors. One of those factors is that there's actually changing business models due to technology. So organizations want to adopt more technology to reduce their labor dependency and to offer 24/7 productivity. But unions resist some of this technology adoption because that means that there might be job loss. And that's, very much violates the perception of job security for a union. So unions are a little bit more resistant against technology. The other thing we've seen is that consumers have changed. So in the past, we didn't need things immediately. We didn't need 7-day delivery. We as consumers were different in the past. And now these new models of consumers, very much focused on volume and oftentimes at the cost of quality. So there's been consumer differences that have happened as well. The third thing is that we have gig economy workers. And some of these competitors are using gig economy workers to reduce their commitment to the employees. So gig economy workers don't get the same protections that full-time workers get. They don't get the same pay. They're often paid significantly less. They don't have pension plans. They assume a lot of the risk that's involved with employment. And the gig economy work model means that the competitors are able to then be more profitable or offer at a lower cost. In this case, the competitors are profitable. But we're also seeing a shift in how business is being done. And these traditional collective bargaining agreements had clauses that were grandfathered in year over year, or negotiation after negotiation, that need to be reopened. Things like, are we allowed to use part-time workers instead of full-time workers in this capacity? And that's where the difficulties are now becoming encountered because, this business model simply isn't sustainable anymore.
Just in our last minute here, how will this particularly, the Canada Post strike, particularly impact Canadians, especially we have obviously the holidays coming up and Black Friday?
Yeah, so I see 5 groups. One is the employer. The more that the consumer moves to the competitors, the harder it's going to be for Canada Post to be profitable in the future. So they'd want to resolve this quickly. The second is the employees, ones who are on strike. They're worried about their own financial situation, their own affordability as they're entering the holiday season. But even beyond that, paying for their kids and their family and their lifestyle. So they're also at risk. The third is the seniors. A lot of seniors don't know how to use the alternatives, such as using My Services Canada to get their old age benefits as a direct deposit. They don't have the tools to often use the technology to, reduce their dependency on delivered mail. The fourth is small business owners. Canada is a very entrepreneurial society, and small business owners are either deciding to go with a higher cost competitor or to delay their delivery of their parcels, essentially reducing the revenue this time of year. And the fifth, of course, is the people who live in rural Canada, because there's no other parcel or mail delivery service in many of these areas, and their only means to get information and product is through Canada Post. So those 5 groups, I think, are especially negatively impacted.
Thank you very much, Nita, for walking us through this morning's concerns. We'll see what happens from here.
I really hope for a resolution soon.
Take care. Nita Chinzer is Associate Professor with the Department of Management at the University of Guelph. We'll have more on the strike this morning, labor disputes across the country on World Report in minutes. But right now, local news headlines with Heather Wells.
Good morning. Well, the trial of 2 men accused of smuggling migrants across the Canada-U.S. border begins today in Minnesota. The men are charged in the freezing deaths of an Indian couple and their 2 young children in January 2022. They were found near the border at Emerson. Well, no Grey Cup for Winnipeg. Mike O'Shea, our head coach of the Bombers, says it was a wild year and it just didn't end the way he had anticipated. We're going to hear from Mike O'Shea and others following yesterday's Grey Cup loss. Coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
We have our own fan who's feeling blue. He wore his Bomber blue to Vancouver. Didn't come back with a smile on his face, though, or won't be coming back, I should say. We're reaching him in BC right after 7 to talk more about being at the game last night. In addition to the next hour of information radio, by this next summer, pedestrians are going to be crossing Portage and Main once again. But can the reopening bring new life to our downtown? Ahead on the information radio, we have an urban columnist who's going to weigh in. And physiotherapy services are coming to 2 First Nation communities to make it easier for patients who are unable to travel. We're going to hear more details on how that new expansion's working in our province, so stay tuned for that as well. Lots ahead. Mainly clear right now, -2. Highways in Westman might be a little bit partly snow-covered and slick, so take care. A high in Winnipeg today of 5 degrees.
Today on The Current. We know that the current response that we offer is not adequate.
Cities across Canada are figuring out how to deal with very visible mental health and addictions crises. Some communities want to try involuntary treatment, but experts say the evidence isn't there to show it actually works. That's coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. EU leaders are discussing whether to follow U.S. President Joe Biden's lead and allow Ukraine to use their long-range weapons to strike deep inside Russia. It is a reversal of policy for the West, one the Kremlin says will escalate tensions. Krista Gomansing has more.
There's nothing that says there's a 60-kilometer or 100-kilometer range that's okay, and anything longer is not okay.
That's Kirk Volker, the former United States Special Representative for Ukraine negotiations. He says the previous missile restrictions were not based in international law, and this reversal may be awkward but needed.
It's nearly 3 years since Russia's full-scale invasion, and Putin has been counting on Western fatigue. I don't think we're quite there, and in fact, after 3 years, we're seeing signs that the Russian military is suffering its own fatigue.
Ukraine has been asking for months to use donated long-range weapons to strike Russian military infrastructure. The West is using the deployment of thousands of North Korean troops to Russian front lines as rationale for the approval. Shashank Joshi is the defense editor at The Economist.
It's not going to suddenly dramatically change things, but it will sap Russian strength.
That, he says, will put Ukraine on better footing should the incoming U.S. administration bring the two sides to the negotiating table. The UK and France have also provided long-range weapons to Ukraine. France's foreign minister says European approvals could be on the way.
This was an option that we would consider.
But Ukrainian MP Maria Ianova wants more action from allies quickly.
We understand the procedures in democratic societies, but for us, time is human lives.
Crystal Gamansing, CBC News, London.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau will meet with U.S. President Joe Biden this afternoon. They're both attending the G20 summit in Brazil. Trudeau is also expected to sit down with several other heads of state, including newly installed Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum. Trudeau has voiced concerns about high levels of Chinese investment in Mexico. The PM is also taking part in main events of the summit, many of which focus on hunger and poverty. Health officials in Gaza say more children are experiencing malnutrition. Hospitals are under siege by Israeli forces. Aid groups are struggling to deliver food, medicine, and surgical equipment. And some are calling for the UN to officially declare a famine in the Palestinian territory. Sasha Petrusik has more from Jerusalem.
Grief at Nasser Hospital after Israeli strikes killed dozens in Beth Lahia. More dead after air attacks at 2 refugee camps in central Gaza overnight. Rescuers still counting casualties from Israeli strikes in Jabalia camp to the north. People are risking their lives just to get bread for their children, says one survivor. It's an injustice. Israel insists the military operations are needed to uproot Hamas militants still embedded throughout Gaza. It lost 2 soldiers in the attacks in the north. But there is suffering even among Gaza's survivors, especially from a lack of food aid. At Al-Aqsa Hospital, Hanan Sob's 2-month-old son is fading fast from malnutrition. There's no food for mothers to eat to produce milk, she says. Aid workers, UN agencies, and even the United States say Israel is not allowing enough aid trucks into Gaza. Less than 20% of the 350 per day that are required. Amjad Al-Shawa is director of the NGO network in Gaza.
We called on the UN to declare Gaza as famine zone.
That would underline the urgency, but it may do little to solve the crisis if more trucks are not allowed in amid the fighting. Sasha Petrusik, CBC News, Jerusalem.
Climate funding is a major issue as COP29 enters its second week. The climate talks in Baku, Azerbaijan are aimed at reaching a collective deal to combat climate change. The CBC's international climate correspondent Susan Ormiston is in Azerbaijan and joins me now. And Susan, what is the mood at COP29 going into this second crucial week?
Well, I'd have to say it's somber, maybe worried. This climate conference kind of started under a black cloud and it really hasn't lifted. It's trying to hammer out a finance deal to support developing countries deal with climate change and, importantly, help them to move off fossil fuels. But we're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars. And the question is, who will pay and how? We spoke to Caroline Bruyette with the Climate Action Network Canada and Advocacy Group.
The first week saw particularly slow progress.
There's still hope that we can land a transformational deal here, but really now it's in the hand of the delegates and the presidency to give us a good process of how we are going to get there. It is going to include long nights, but really we cannot afford to fail.
What are the sticking points in making more progress?
Well, it's really about how much money will wealthier countries contribute. The idea being that those who have historically high levels of harmful emissions should be paying for those who've contributed less to the climate crisis. That's the idea. But it's also about how would the financing work? For example, will it be public dollars, as in wealthier countries putting up public money, or rely on private investors in part? Will there be grants or loans? Now, these are technical issues, but they're paramount to cracking the code on how poorer countries deal with the effects of climate change. But I would say there are significant headwinds here globally, with attention being on wars and the incoming U.S. presidency. So in spite of the reality, we've just had the warmest year on record and the severe storms we're all witnessing, COP29 is really trying to capture attention.
All right. Thank you, Susan.
You're welcome.
The CBC's international climate correspondent, Susan Ormiston, in Baku, Azerbaijan. In New Delhi, the smog is so bad that strict traffic restrictions are being put in place. As of today, diesel trucks are banned in India's capital. Many people have had to shift to remote work. The thick smog has forced the government to close most schools in the city. Construction has also been shut down. India's air quality is being classified as severe plus, the highest so far this year. The trial of two men accused of smuggling migrants across the Canada-U.S. border begins today in Minnesota. The men are charged in the freezing deaths of an Indian couple and their two young children in January of 2022. Officials say the men would bring people from India to Canada and then walk them from Manitoba across the Minnesota border. The men have pleaded not guilty to several charges in the U.S., including causing serious bodily injury and conspiracy to transport aliens. After getting badly hurt in a car crash, an Ontario man took the other driver and one of the biggest insurance companies in Canada to court. He says that during his legal battle, he found himself under attack by key medical witnesses for the insurer. Rosa Marcatelli from our Go Public team has his story.
Headache, confusion.
John Grawl's life changed in a flash 7 years ago when a driver traveling in the wrong lane hit him head on.
It's amazing what can happen in the blink of an eye.
Unable to work and facing mounting bills, he says, Grawl went to court for compensation, taking on the other driver and his insurance company, Aviva. The judge accepted that Grawl had a traumatic brain injury after multiple doctors backed that up. Yet one of the medical experts hired by Aviva testified that Grawl's brain injury had resolved, and the other said that Grawl never had a brain injury at all.
I couldn't believe it.
Neither could the judge in the case, who called both of those medical experts out, saying one of the doctors was behaving like a biased paid expert, trying to hide evidence from the court, while the other showed an alarming lack of attention to detail and contradicted her own medical opinion. That case launched a wider Go Public investigation that found more than 24 other injury cases where medical experts hired by insurance companies were called out by the court. Medical experts have a duty to serve the court, not the side that hires them. Rona DeRush is an advocate for accident victims.
The quality of the medical evidence that is used in courts is a big concern. It's important that the public knows.
The Grawl court decision was appealed by the other side, but in the end, both sides reached a settlement, according to his lawyer. Aviva tells Go Public it expects its experts to be fair and objective. Rosa Marcatelli, CBC News, Calgary.
And there's more on this at cbcnews.ca. It is the second most read story on our website this morning, and you can see the full letter response from one of the medical experts in the story. That is the latest from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at Information Radio, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. Thanks for being with us. Mainly clear, -2. Well, speaking of teams, we're going to talk to a fan who says he's already looking forward to next year. He's in Vancouver. He was at the Grey Cup last night as the Bombers did lose the big game. We're going to hear more from him about what that felt like in the stands. In addition, this hour on the show, speaking of next year, by next summer, pedestrians will be crossing Portage and Main once again. But can the reopening of our city's most iconic intersection bring new life to our downtown? Ahead, our urban columnist is going to weigh in. And physiotherapy services are coming to 2 First Nation communities in Manitoba to make it easier for patients who are unable to travel. Coming up, we'll hear more details on how that new expansion is going to work. First now, let's go to Heather Wells, though, who's in with more news headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, a Manitoba family is looking for answers after a mother and her 8-year-old daughter were killed in a crash. Sarah and Alexa Unger died after a semi-trailer hit their SUV Friday at a highway intersection near Altona. RCMP believes the driver of the semi failed to stop at a stop sign before crashing into the SUV. To Vancouver now. Bombers head coach Mike O'Shea sums it up this way.
It was a hell of a ride this year. Quite a different season, and we just didn't play our best football at the end.
Winnipeg Blue Bombers couldn't eke out a win in BC Place yesterday, losing the Grey Cup to Toronto 41-24, the 3rd straight championship loss for the Blue and Gold. We'll hear from players and fans coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
A lot of crying coming up.
I think so.
Oh, my goodness.
A lot of sad faces in the newsroom, too.
Oh, my goodness. All right. Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
7:12 right now. Let's go to what's happening in the with Tabby Adiemi for what's happening in the weather forecast. Hi there.
Yeah, we're looking at a mix of sun and clouds in most of the areas today. Then we'll see rain and snow in some regions along with breezy conditions. In Winnipeg right now, it is -1 and clear. The forecast includes a mix of sun and clouds with light winds. The high for Winnipeg today would get to around 5 degrees. And if we look at the northern part of the province, we're seeing cloudy conditions at Thompson and Zero hovering around 0 at this time. And then down south, we'll see a mix of sun and clouds and light winds. 6 degrees in Brandon. And then for Dauphin, Gimli, Steinbach and Morris, we're seeing temperatures around -2. And also just to add, we do have that winter storm watch in effect for Western Manitoba starting tomorrow as that low pressure system moves in tonight. And that's going to be bringing rain, but it's going to quickly change to freezing rain and snow. Along with this would come some strong winds that will create blizzard-like conditions, and this will impact, as mentioned earlier, Portage, Laprairie, Headingley, Morden, Winkler, Brandon, and of course the Morris region. So for folks in these regions, get ready for some snowy weather to arrive tomorrow. But for today, Winnipeg, we will see more of like a mix of sun and cloudy conditions, and then we get to high of 5.
You know what? So you're talking about the weather turning and the Bombers lost, the Jets got shut out. I mean, I know not everyone's a sports fan, but all these things, and then the gray weather. And I'm thinking, maybe is this the morning? We do this every once in a while, Abby. Is this the morning we just say, call and tell us a joke?
I think so. I need something to just
hang
change
on
my
to?
mood. Yeah, hang on to this morning.
Right? Okay, so 788-3205. Let's give it a shot. Tell us a joke, Manitoba. There. See how this goes. Corey's the one that's going to have to answer the line. So.
So exciting. Keep him quality, please.
Right? Yeah. Corey will be the first line of defense for what gets on the air.
It'll all be dad jokes only. That make it through.
Well, that's okay then. Right? You have to also be looking at the traffic line. What's up on the commute?
So far, at least here in Winnipeg, no major issues to report. But at the highways this morning, just heads up, there's some poor visibility, particularly around the Roblin area. So just heads up there in that area, as well around Thompson, either whether you're heading east or towards Gillum or west towards Lynn Lake. I'm seeing some poor visibility being reported on the highways, as well as some snow cover as well. So heads up there. If you have any other clarity to offer me, if you see something and you want to give me a more in-depth report on what you're seeing out there, give me a call. That number 204-788-3093.
So some quotes from the Bombers this morning. If you're on their Facebook page, if you're a fan and you follow the team, then after the loss in the Grey Cup last night, we heard this from Zach Caleros. Quote, "We put in a lot of time, a lot of work together, so to not have it go your way in the ultimate game is obviously tough." Fans are responding directly, which I think is kind of nice. So Lenore Tyler wrote in, "Don't pay attention to the negativity. The bashers are out in full force because you didn't win. You Bombers didn't get to where you are by playing poorly. You're a great team. So sorry for the loss. You're still the second best in Canada. That's awesome. It's a great accomplishment. Congratulations." So a lot of people writing in with kind of notes of condolence for the Bombers this morning. Let's remember that this is a sports team, but I think what ends up happening CFL-wise, especially in the prairies for some reason, maybe because of our long history with CFL and football here, you do see these players and you kind of, a lot of them end up living here, staying here, building their lives here, and they have second jobs and other businesses. And so we always say for the love of the game. Well, it just didn't go our way in the Grey Cup. If you're a Bomber fan, you probably woke up on the wrong side of the bed this morning. Last night, the Toronto Argonauts beat the Bombers 41-24 at BC Place. This is the Bombers' third consecutive Grey Cup loss, and we went in as a heavy favorite. Kevin, Henry Vandenberg is a super fan. He's been to 29 Grey Cups, and he didn't sit this one out. He did make the trip to Vancouver this weekend to watch the game live from BC Place, and he's with us now. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
I don't even know what to say, Henry. What was it like being there? Like, could you? What I want to know is, what did it feel like at the start of the game, and when did you start to worry?
You know what? I felt great at the start of the game. I thought we were going to win it all, and it really kind of fell apart in the fourth when they started turning the ball over and Zach got hurt.
I was missing the pop from the start. I was live at the Western Final last week. I don't know about you, and it was like they came out and it was like, wow, what a team.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, they came out and they were a little sluggish, but, I thought they were still playing better than Toronto was. And I thought, they'll turn it around. They'll come back. But it didn't work out that way. They needed another quarter.
Yeah. So did they wait too long or did Toronto just have our number last night? Because the defense did play well. However, there were a lot of open pockets and then, turnovers, as you said. Like, we just didn't sort of seem to be clicking, and they certainly were.
Oh, yeah. They looked like they were better prepared than us. And, the offense was there. They were trying to go long and make some room for Brady, and it just didn't connect.
So what did it feel like to be a Winnipeg fan in the stands at the Grey Cup?
You know what? That's unfortunately experienced with it. It's 3 in a row now.
Yeah, I guess so, right? Yeah.
But it's next year.
So let me ask you this, and I'm at risk of a lot of fans getting mad for me asking this morning, but at what point is this about not performing in the biggest of big games? Because we can analyze all the things, but their seasons leading up were different, but we just can't clinch the deal in the big games.
It's like the last two were at least close, and this one the wheels just fell off. It was so I'm not sure. I think that I still think that if they play Toronto 3 more times, they win 3 more times. Mm-hmm. But it just wasn't the night last night.
Let's go to some of the experience that you had as a fan, because the game is the game, but there's also the experience of going to the Grey Cup, and you've been to many. So how good of a show did Vancouver put on? Tell me a little bit about this zip lining all over the place.
I did watch it. That's all I can say about that.
Super fun. What were the crowds like at the Grey Cup?
Oh, it was a lot of fun, and it was a great venue. They were at the most of the events were at the convention center. And it's really nice, looking out on the bay and everything like that. And everyone is really friendly. It's the Grey Cup, and you talk to everyone, and sort of try to avoid the Saskatchewan people. But other than that, It all went very, very well. We had a good time. We had a good place to stay, and everything was very good except the game.
Right. So you've been to 29 of them. Next year is in So is next year number 30 for you then in Winnipeg?
Yeah.
Oh, that's going to be exciting. What's your favorite memory of Grey Cups over all the years? Do you have some that stand out, whether on, during the game or whether in the lead up to the weekend when you go to these games?
You know what? The first one I went to was 1990 when they won after a long drought, and that was really good because I'd always talked about going to the Grey Cup and always thought I'm going to do that someday. And so I was finally there. Not only was I there, but the Bombers won it convincingly, and who knew I was going to have to wait like 22 more years to see it again.
I know. I was in high school in 1990. I feel that. How did you become a fan? 30 years is a long time.
Well, I was a fan long before that. Even back in high school, we used to talk about football and, go to games when we could. I'd go back to the Don Jonas era. So that would be the 70s. And, then when I could, I guess, afford it, and I started going,
and you never looked back. Well, hopefully next year when you go again to the Grey Cup, the Bombers will be on the right side of the win column. Thank you very much, Henry, and have a safe trip back home here.
No, thank you. Thank you very much. And next year.
Next year. That's Henry Vandenberg, who is still in BC after the stinging loss to the Toronto Argonauts yesterday in the Grey Cup. The Blue Bombers superfan joining us via phone this morning, obviously. If you want to read more about the game, highlights, and also what Zach Claris had to say about that injury, he cut his finger pretty badly, needed stitches. In fact, that was in the fourth quarter. You can hear what he had to say to media and check it all out on our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
I remember riding, mesmerized in, staying up all night, just kids up in the silver lining. I was looking to meet up in my Adidas, and every day I dreamed about being like them. Got my stripes, but I can't pretend. Hey, better days. Say never, don't you see? 'Cause I think I like you, and if you wanted to, we could skip this party for something better. Like Oasis, we'll live forever. When I second guess myself, wishing I was someone else I know, it's wrong. I don't wanna let it show. Just sit back and watch me glow.
Used to wipe snot on the stoop. Came off the porch, used to see tunnel vision till I walked by you. And I don't even spit game. I celebrate how we met, cause that number was a big day. Or better yet, used to lose in a bet. A fool with the debt, now I'm up, cause you got me with the juiciest step. Please don't ever tell me, played it by ear, the city said that you like me. But I ain't like the man I was looking at now. But you can see the man who was looking back. Gave me another reason to run it back. Just know if you ever leave me, I'm coming back. Look, I don't need to boast and brag, but you the best days that I never knew I'd have. And y'all can just assume I'm whack. Because with her by my side, I'm the most relaxed.
Well, there, that's kind of our token of sportsmanship because we're playing a Toronto artist. Even though Toronto beat us, we're about to do sports. Good tune, though, right? Wardrobe's a new project from the singer-songwriter. This is Lauren Bork, by the way, and this is the debut single called Better Days. It features Nova Scotia's aquaculture as well. I like it. But unfortunately, we do have to talk about football more. Scott Reguera is here.
Really, a Toronto artist?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right.
That's what we got. A good one too, actually.
Yeah, I would agree.
I couldn't bring myself to play the Toronto Argos cheering with the Grey Cup. I will leave that to you.
Oh, you think that's what I have lined up for you?
No, maybe not.
Would I do that? I would not do that. Are you kidding me?
This is like a lot of people are being very positive, saying, well, there's next year, but I think we better stop and try to figure out the Bombers' 3 Grey Cup appearances. And a loss yesterday again to the Argos.
Yeah. And just like their 2 previous Grey Cup defeats, Marcy, this one was another one that Winnipeg should have won. Never mind the final score of 41-24. This game was close for the Main. The Bombers had the lead at halftime. They were within 4 points to start the fourth quarter. But by then, Zach Collaros had suffered the injury that really cost them the game, in my view anyway. That cut to his index finger on his throwing hand that required stitches. It was painful just to watch him. Although Collaros, wincing all the while, fought gamely to get Winnipeg back into it, his hand, as he told reporters later, was numb from the anesthesia he received, and the glove he wore over it did nothing to help his accuracy. After that injury, he threw 3 interceptions, and then Collaros was left to contemplate a 3rd successive Grey Cup loss.
It feels pretty bad every time. There's just so many people in the locker room that you care for, you develop deep bonds with, put in a lot of time, a lot of work together. So to not have it go your way, in the ultimate game is obviously tough. Osh spoke a little bit, just kind of about the journey, but nothing's going to make you feel better tonight. So a lot of tears, a lot of guys that care about each other. It's just tough, man.
Yeah, it's hard to listen to Zach. For a game where the backup on the other team, Nick Arbuckle, was the most valuable player. He was excellent in the stead of the injured Chad Kelly. All I was thinking about when Collaros was obviously in agony was, imagine if the Bombers had their regular backup, Chris Streveler, available to go in there, and what kind of impact. I mean, it coulda, woulda, shoulda, but, you couldn't throw a very green Terry Wilson in there. Obviously, Mike O'Shea wasn't comfortable doing that.
Although he was throwing the ball on the sideline, because at some point, got to make plans. Yeah.
Got to dance with the lady that brung you, like they say, right? Zach's 36 now, though. He's got 1 more year on his pretty hefty contract. I know Milt Stiegel was obviously the former Bomber, and one of the broadcasters last night was sort of mulling over the fact that Collaros in the last 2 Grey Cups now has 0 touchdown throws, I think, and 6 interceptions. It's not been good of late. So something needs to give next year. They've got all kinds of questions they can address with a long off season, longer than most.
Oh, the Grey Cup's here next year.
Perfect time to right the wrongs, right?
Yeah.
And may I say this? The Buffalo Bills lost 4 Super Bowls in a row, and the Rough Riders back in the 20s and 30s lost 5 Grey Cups in a row. So they're not,
stinging.
All things being relative.
It's interesting. People writing in saying people are worried about the Bombers now being known as the team that's not able to win the big one instead of for their season, right? Instead of, that's always, anyway, lots to analyze.
Yeah, and lots of time to do it.
Let's go somewhere else. How would you characterize the state of the league now that the CFL season's over, Scott?
All things being relative in this league, mostly solid ground for the CFL right now, but with cracks. The 3 biggest markets, Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal, all saw modest attendance increases. TV ratings have seen bumps as well. And last night, remember, the Grey Cup was up against the biggest NFL game of the season, Kansas City and Buffalo. The renewal with TSN, if that is indeed going to happen, comes up in 2026. So that's something we'll have to continue to watch. And then, of course, with Randy Ambrosi stepping down as commissioner after 7 years, leadership is in question right now. They're going to need somebody as the new commissioner with a strong business background, with a grasp of the modern media landscape, and who knows, maybe somebody that can even find a way to get a 10th team in this league. So as ever, more questions than answers in the CFL, particularly amongst Bombers faithful.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, let's leave it there. Thank you.
And go Jets, go.
That wasn't good this weekend either, but go Jets, go.
Okay.
Thanks, Scott. All right, let's have a quick look at what's going on in traffic here. If you look at 511 on the highways this morning, you're going to find some that are partly covered with snow, some poor visibility. Specifically, I'm talking about highways up around Roblin today, so be careful. 788-3093. And if you're making plans, know there's a winter storm watch for southwestern Manitoba, and things are expected to get bad starting tonight and for the next couple of days. Right now, your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30 -1 right now. We are going to be above normal, and the sun will shine on Winnipeg even though we lost the Grey Cup. Mix of sun and clouds today, a high of 5. A family in southern Manitoba is grieving the loss of a mother and her 8-year-old daughter. Sarah and Alexa Unger died after a semi-trailer crashed into their SUV Friday at a highway intersection near Altona. Peter and Susan Unger are Sarah's parents-in-law and Alexa's grandparents. They say the mother and their daughter were on their way home from grocery shopping.
She was only 35 years old.
Lots of life left on her.
She left a 10-year-old boy behind.
And a very good marriage they had, a loving home, and now he has to live with this all his life.
RCMP believe the driver of the semi failed to stop at a stop sign before crashing into the SUV. No charges have been laid, but police say they are expected. The U.S. trial of 2 men charged after a family from India died crossing the border from Manitoba in 2022 starts today. CBC's Caitlin Garlick is in Fergus Falls, Minnesota.
Jurors are being summoned from across northwest Minnesota this morning for a chance to decide a case that shocked Manitobans almost 3 years ago. Jagdish and Vaishali Patel and their 11 and 3-year-old kids were found frozen in Manitoba a few meters from the U.S. border in January 2022. Harsh Kumar Patel, no relation to the victims, and Steve Shand were indicted in the case earlier this year. Both pleaded not guilty to several counts related to human smuggling. Shand was arrested near the border with other Indian nationals in his van. Patel is accused of coordinating the smuggling and hiring Shand. Their trial is expected to last 5 days and hear from witnesses, including 2 Canadian forensic pathologists who will speak about the Patel family's autopsies. Caitlin Gowerluck, CBC News, Fergus Falls, Minnesota.
Well, no Grey Cup for Winnipeg.
For the second time in 3 years, Toronto is the Grey Cup champion.
The Toronto Argos last night on TSN beating the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in the Grey Cup game in Vancouver, 41-24 the final. It's the 3rd straight time the Bombers have lost the CFL championship. Bomber star Willie Jefferson says it is disappointing.
It's heartbreaking, right? You know, to have such a good team, such a good unit, guys that we built, you know, this camaraderie and stuff with, to come down to the end and the end like that, like, you know what I'm saying, it's sad.
Well, speaking of sad, Bomber fans who made the trip to Vancouver for the game weren't sugarcoating this loss.
No. Lousy game. You know what? We never showed up. Claris had a bad game. I don't know. It was ours for the taking. You know, with a quarterback out, it was ours. And it just, I don't know. This year's been like that. We've been hot and cold, so I don't know. Given another chance, I think we'd have won it. Next week, we played them again, we'd win.
Well, I wish the game was at least a little bit of a better game, but, you know, someone has to lose, someone has to win. It's okay. We'll be back.
Sad.
Yeah.
But we're going to go back and keep cheering for them.
Definitely. Absolutely. Lifers. Go Blue! We love you!
Go Blue!
Yay!
So the Bombers get set for the next season, hoping to try again to win the championship. And that could happen right here. Grey Cup 2025 is in Winnipeg. U.S. officials say President Joe Biden has authorized Ukraine to use American long-range missiles to strike targets deep inside Russia. This decision is a reversal of U.S. policy. Senior Russian politicians say they're angry about the decision, but there has been no response yet from President Vladimir Putin. Ukrainian MP Oleksiy Goncharenko welcomes the news, but says it comes late.
It's a pity that it took 1,000 days to make this decision finally, but better later than never. We all understand that President Biden is leaving and we don't know what Trump thinks about it. But in any way, that's a very important step. This will give us possibility to save hundreds of lives.
The shift comes weeks after Donald Trump's presidential victory. He has been critical of U.S. support for Ukraine and has claimed he can win the More in a day. You can hear more national and international news on World Report at 8. Robots are helping people in rural and remote places access more physiotherapy and rehabilitation services. It's a pilot project that connects people with healthcare workers in Winnipeg. It's available in Pinnimutang and Lake Manitoba First Nations, Ashern, and Eriksdale. Instead of a face, a 3-foot-tall robot has a screen that lets the physiotherapist be there virtually. The robot can also move and rotate to get different angles. 78-year-old Dwayne Moore was a little surprised his physiotherapist wasn't there in person at the last appointment in Lake Manitoba, but
you don't really have to go and see him now. You got the video in front of you, which is helping the traveling, and that helps in the costs, of traveling back and forth. And now that with the gas so high, and being right at home here, even better.
the program's a collaboration between the Interlake Eastern Health Authority, the University of Manitoba, and Riverview Health Centre. You can find more Manitoba news on our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Heather Wells in our news department this morning, 7:36 a.m. It's time for our regional forecast. Abby Adeyemi is in and has lots of details. We've got an active day ahead.
Yep, a low pressure system is moving in, and that would start tonight with rain, and it will quickly change to freezing rain and snow. And along with the strong winds gusting up to 80 kilometers will create blizzard-like conditions. If you are in Western Manitoba, which includes areas as, Portage and Main, Headingley, Morden, Winkler, Tona, Morris, get ready for some snowy weather to arrive tonight into tomorrow. But for today, we're going to see a mix of sun and clouds in most of the areas. Winnipeg -1 at this time. Clear skies we're seeing outside. Expect a mix of sun and clouds. Some light winds will come with that, and our highs for today in the city would get to 5 degrees. Brandon sitting at -6. We're seeing some foggy and misty conditions in that part of the province. Today we'll have a mix of sun and clouds and a high of 2 degrees. Thompson -1 and mostly cloudy. You're seeing some snow that should be light snow that should be ending this morning, then cloudy day ahead, high of 1. Churchill, light snow at this time, becoming breezy. Currently you are at 0. Your high for today would get to 1. Dauphin is sitting at -2 and clear for this moment. Expect a mix of sun and clouds and a high of 2 degrees in the forecast. Gimli sitting at -2 and cloudy for the Interlake region today. Expect a mix of sun and clouds, light winds, and a high of 5. Steinbach -2 and cloudy. The forecast calls for mainly sunny skies in that region. Then you see some light breeze and a high of 6. Moritz -2 and cloudy. The Pembina Valley region would see a mix of sun and cloud today with light winds and a high of 6 degrees. So across board, we're getting a mix of sun and clouds to start, and then as we get into the evening period, we do have that winter storm watch which begins tomorrow, bringing rain, freezing rain, snow, along with strong winds, and that's going to be coming from the north down to the south. Expect more like a mix of rain and snow with that weather is going to be impacting mostly western Manitoba. Right now, Winnipeg, we are at -1.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
All right. Let's get into what's going on in the weather forecast. In the traffic. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I'm sure
it's Monday.
Yeah,
apparently,
exactly.
we just heard all the weather, and apparently I'm supposed to be asking you about traffic.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say is let's find out how weather is impacting traffic, because you said the highways are kind of snow-covered,
Yeah,
right?
it's mostly just around Thompson right now where the major issues kind of are, and that's mostly just around visibility. I'm looking at Manitoba 511. If you're heading from Thompson east to Gillam or west to Lynn Lake, both those highways are being reported as poor visibility and covered with some snow. So just be careful. It might be slippery. It might be poor visibility heading either way from Thompson. If you see anything else though going on down south here, things don't seem to be too bad. I'm looking forward to getting a few more calls, I imagine, about 24 to 48 hours from folks. So write this number down if you're going to be hitting the roads the next couple days, because I'm sure you'll want to give me a call. That number, 204-788-3093.
All right. Thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
Well, next, a story about Winnipeg's most iconic intersection, Portage and Main. Next summer, 2025, Portage and Main is going to reopen, as you likely know, to pedestrians for the first time in decades. So what does that mean? Well, it means we'll be able to walk across it. But let's look at the history just a little bit. the history, we have to go back to the 1970s. 1979, the iconic corner is shut down to people on foot. So citizens instead head below into the underground concourse to cross the street. So the intersection is set to reopen July 1st next year. How will that change Winnipeg's downtown? That's a question that Ben Farr, CBC Manitoba's urban living contributor, dove into for his latest column you can find online this morning. He's here for the third edition of My Hometown. Good morning, Ben.
Hi.
Nice to see you. Yeah. So let's start with a bit of the history. For a lot of people listening, they may not know all of the history to this. So let's remind people why the city originally closed the intersection to pedestrians in the 70s in the first place.
Yeah, it really does all come back to the 70s, back when Winnipeg was starting to see a bit of a decline in the downtown. So they were looking at what was causing it, and what they found were that people were leaving the downtown core and heading for the suburbs. There was a lot of development in the suburbs, so they were looking for ways to bring them back downtown, and they thought that prioritizing the car would be a fantastic way to do that. With the pitch of a new underground mall at the corner, which is now Winnipeg Square, they thought that closing the corner would help to get people driving into the downtown core, and by bringing them underground, it would help them to use that new mall and spend time downtown once again.
So now 2018 is the next year we're going to take us to, from the 70s to 2018, because that was the year of the big plebiscite where Winnipeggers were asked, this was attached to our election vote in the fall, whether or not they wanted the intersection reopened, Portage and Main. So people said no. What changed?
It was two main factors that caused people to vote no back in 2018. The first being traffic, and the second being costs. Back then, it was going to cost around $11 million to reopen the corner. But in the last 6 years, conditions have changed a lot. The underground concourse needs some pretty hefty repairs that come with a price tag of $73 million now, and will cause 4 to 5 years of traffic delays, all to buy us another 40 to 50 years with the underground concourse and the intersection closed once again. So City Council decided, instead of going back to another plebiscite or debating, that they would vote to reopen the corner. And my favorite quote is from Mayor Scott Gillingham: "It's time to deal with the Portage and Main issue once and for all."
So in your research, I know that you went to Cleveland. You looked at Cleveland. You found that Cleveland saw positive changes when planners put people ahead of cars. So you have an example that is relevant to the conversation. What happened in Cleveland?
So post 9/11, Cleveland was having similar issues with their downtown core that Winnipeg had in the 70s, but they took a different approach. Instead of prioritizing cars, they prioritized pedestrians and cyclists in their downtown. And after about a decade, what they found was that their downtown core's population had increased by over 30%. Their downtown core was far more vibrant, more welcoming for different people across the community, and more accessible for people with all sorts of different transportation modes.
That was in the 70s, though, or sorry, back in the day, though, right? So this is the question I have as a Winnipegger, right? Can we do that now? After all of these years of not prioritizing people, will it make a difference? You look at other cities in your report, too. So you looked at an initiative on Toronto's Bloor Street. What happened there?
Again, it was relatively similar. On Bloor Street in Toronto, they decided in 2016 to remove 100 on-street parking spaces and replace them with bike lanes. And at the beginning, business owners were very concerned that they were going to lose traffic into their businesses, lose sales, because people wouldn't be able to access their businesses as easily. But once those bike lanes were opened, they found the exact opposite. There was more people on the sidewalks in the community and ultimately spending time in their businesses. So they ended up thriving after, not suffering like they thought they would.
And I should clarify here, sorry, because the Cleveland research you were citing, as you said, was post 9/11 when they made their changes. So we're looking back at the 70s, but post 9/11 for that. And Toronto was 2016, you said, for this example. What do you think we can learn from those cities here in Winnipeg?
I think we do have quite a bit we can learn from those two cities, mainly that the big thing we need to prioritize is getting people to visit our downtown and finding ways to do that. When they did that, they saw a positive change. So right now, our downtown, and specifically at Portage and Main, it's set up to get people in and out and through that corner, whether they're in cars or underground in the concourse. But if we can find ways to get people using our downtown by prioritizing pedestrians and cyclists and even transit with a new transit hub that's opening up at Portage and Main in the future, it should cause a lot of positive change and make people spend more time downtown in those local businesses, in the local communities as well.
It's interesting because up to now, I would argue, and I've covered all these stories, leading up in great detail, we do focus a lot on what it will mean to open the intersection. And I mean like the logistics of the physically moving people or cars through that big intersection. But now that we know what's happening, is you're suggesting the real shift to looking at what could that impact be and why, what do we need that impact to be? How will opening Portage and Main to pedestrians benefit downtown potentially then? You're kind of setting this up.
I see the biggest difference being that downtown communities are going to be reconnected for the first time in 45 years. I mean, vibrant communities like the Exchange District and the Forks are currently separated by Portage and Main. So reconnecting those communities and making downtown a little bit more whole for people to engage with will help to make it more vibrant and make it more welcoming for people who may not spend a lot of time downtown right now.
Thanks for coming in. People can read your piece and appreciate you coming in with us today.
Thank you very much.
That's Ben Farr, CBC Manitoba's new urban living commentator. His column, My Hometown, explores life in Winnipeg, how we live, what works, what doesn't, and how we can make this city better. If you want to read more in the series, My Hometown, including a great video, by the way, please go to our website at cbc.ca/Manitoba. And if you want to weigh in on Portage and Main, I know you've weighed in along the way, but what about this now? Now that it's happening, now that we're on the cusp of this, next summer, we're going to be already down there and walking around. But what do you need it to mean for downtown? What do you think is the key to having our downtown become more vibrant, and how does the reopening of Portage and Main kind of work into that in your brain? Give us a call this morning. We'll get those calls on 788-3205, or you can weigh in on Facebook if you'd rather do that there. My Marcy Marcusa page acts as a show page.
Are there better ways for us to talk to each other? And could that help us build a better society? Novelist and poet Ian Williams wants to start a conversation about conversations. Hi, I'm Nala Ayed. Join me all next week as Ideas presents the 2024 CBC Massey Lectures, What I Mean to Say, Remaking Conversations in Our Time.
Ideas, weeknights at 8, 8:30 in Newfoundland, and on demand on CBC Listen.
To drink you away, I tried to sing you away, I tried to think of the ways we could have loved if you never left. Now it's you I can't forget. I tried to write you away, send you into outer space. I almost dug my own grave just to bury you so deep. Now you're hanging over me. What is it about you, babe? What is it about you, babe? What is it about you that I just can't erase? If we're 1,000 miles apart, how do you still have my heart? How do you keep on giving me sweet nothings? I'm living on 1,000 memories. I see
It's a debut single from Janet Jacobs. It's called Sweet Nothings. She writes and performs here in Winnipeg. It's -1 in Winnipeg right now, mainly clear. We have a winter storm watch for southwestern Manitoba. It's going to get nasty starting into tonight. Well, coming up after 8 o'clock on CBC's Information Radio here, a new report from the Canadian Museum for Human Rights is shedding some light on how Canadians view human rights at home in Canada, but also abroad. We're going to break down the results with the CEO of the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. That's coming up on the program here after 8 o'clock. We also are going to go back to Vancouver and hear more about the Grey Cup loss for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. CBC Manitoba's Mike Arsenault is there, so stay tuned. Next, though, whether it's recovering from a car crash, regaining strength from a stroke, or needing help with mobility, taking care of your body and getting the rehabilitation you need after an event is crucial to maintaining your quality of life. Now, for people who live in remote areas, they may not have access to the same kind of specialists that we might take for granted here down south and in Winnipeg. For people, for example, for people who are in those remote areas, they may not have had a lot of options. But as you've been hearing in the news this morning, some of those might get some help from a robot and a partnership with the University of Manitoba. Some First Nations in particular. Telerehabilitation Services is using video conferencing to connect clients with their physiotherapists, and it's a new service being introduced in 2 First Nations communities, Lake Manitoba First Nation and Penamutang First Nation. CBC reporter Brittany Greenslade has details today.
Clinton Anderson is lucky to be alive, let alone walking.
My life is no longer the same from what it was before. I was the one who took the brunt end of that collision there.
He has a physical reminder of it every day.
Right here is where I had that muscle and lacerations from the accident, and there's also bone chips in my elbow here.
20 months ago, he was driving a work vehicle on a winter road in Ontario when a semi-truck failed to call ahead on the radio system and came quickly around a blind corner.
We weren't expecting anything, and we were just driving casually, and when we come around one corner, there's a truck in our lane, so when you're on a winter road, there's nowhere really to go except for the snowbank or the vehicle.
While doctors were able to mend his injuries, he needs months of intense physical therapy to regain his strength and mobility. But living in Penamutang First Nation, more than 240 kilometers from Winnipeg, getting the help he needed was a struggle.
When I started going to my physio in Winnipeg, it would be, 3.5 hour drive, 3 hours. And I would only book on weekends, so I'd have to book a Friday evening and then a Saturday afternoon.
It's a burden and a barrier and means many go without. But now that's changing.
Hi, Dwayne. Good morning, Tim.
This robot, lovably dubbed Wally, helps to provide care on site so people in Penamutang and Lake Manitoba First Nation don't need to leave their communities. Virtual physio enables outreach beyond the perimeter.
So it's definitely a big need. We learned that pretty early on. We realized it's not that people don't need physio, it's that they just don't have the easiest access to physio.
With the help of an assistant on location, twice a week, Tim Robotic can offer virtual rehab sessions from Winnipeg. This way, patients can see their therapist and interact, not just hear them.
And I want you to bring them apart.
In turn, Romanek can make sure movements and exercises are being done correctly.
It's big in terms of efficiency and continuity of care, so being able to see a person more frequently.
But it did take a little getting used to.
I didn't understand right at the time, then all of a sudden that robot walking came in the room and there he was. I said, oh, playing hooky, eh?
Every second week, Romanek also travels to the Interlake to see clients like Dwayne Moore in person. For Moore, at 78 years old, traveling to Winnipeg for rehab just isn't feasible. The drive or the cost.
I have a truck, and it's about $150 there and back, So on a senior's pension.
The program is a partnership between the 2 First Nations, Riverview Health Centre, the University of Manitoba, and the Regional Health Authority, improving the quality of life for people in those Indigenous communities.
So it's important, especially as anyone gets older, really, just to maintain quality of life and independence, so people can do the things they like to do and they need to do, and keep their mobility and their function as they age, and stay pain-free as long as they can.
It's one way the First Nations are able to address long-standing healthcare vacancies. Trying to staff positions in the community and keep them filled has long been problematic.
We had one doctor when I was growing up. He was here for 2 half days a week, and that was it. All of our services were either in one of the local hospitals while they had services still available, but they've gradually moved to larger urban clusters.
Health Director Lawrence West says this hybrid model can bring services back and expand them.
I've seen a lot of my people suffer without access to services, and I'm a big believer that services delivered locally make the community healthier.
While this isn't a perfect solution, it is one that's helping to bridge the gap.
The services provided locally, they not only provide a quality of life for the people that are accessing them, but it also reduces the burden on the wider healthcare system.
And hopefully keeping people in their communities and homes for longer, helping these First Nations thrive. Brittany Greenslade, CBC News, Lake Manitoba First Nation.
Special report there from CBC reporter Brittany Greenslade, as you heard. If you want to read more about the story, cbc.ca/Manitoba this morning. Please go to our website. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at Information Radio, your morning show on CBC. We'll get into weather traffic in a moment. First, Heather with headlines.
Well, the trial of 2 men accused of smuggling migrants across the Canada-U.S. border begins today in Minnesota. The men are charged in the freezing deaths of an Indian couple and their 2 young children in January of 2022. Officials say the men would bring people from India to Canada and then walk them from Manitoba across the U.S. border. Well, Bomber fans in Vancouver sound stung after last night's Grey Cup loss. For the 3rd straight season, Winnipeg walks away from the championship game empty-handed, losing 41-24 to Toronto. We're going to hear from fans who were there and their criticism of the team coming up in our next local news at 8:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
CBC's Mike Arsenault is also there, and he's going to be joining us after 8 o'clock on the show. I'm Marcy Marcusa. It's -1 in Winnipeg. It's mainly clear, mix of sun and cloud, and a high of 5 degrees today. It's going to get wet then, like really wet, overnight showers, and then tomorrow 10 to 15 millimeters of rain. The big weather story, though, isn't here in Winnipeg. It's in southwestern Manitoba, where there's a winter storm watch. So you're expecting a wind gust up to 80 kilometers per hour. That's going to result in poor visibility and snow and blowing snow, blizzard conditions possible in some areas. The widespread snowfall looks like 15 to 30 centimeters. So yes, it's the stuff you're going to shovel. And this is a swath that's going to affect Portage, La Prairie, Morden, Brandon, Killarney, Melita, Verdon, Dauphin area, Minnedosa, St. Rose, and Swan River. So all of that southwest region is going to be affected by this. It's coming out of Saskatchewan. So we'll see what happens here, folks. That's going to start tonight. And extend over the next couple of days. In traffic this morning, as Corey's been mentioning, up north in Thompson, visibility east to Gillam. Thompson east to Gillam is very poor, and highways around Roblin as well are partly covered with snow as well today. Call us if you need, though, on the commuter line if anything else is an issue, 788-3093. Stay with us. World Report's next.
On Q.
I'm Talia Schlanger sitting in for Tom Power. Irish actors and musicians are really having a moment right now, and you can count Eve Hewson among them. She's the star of the hit series Bad Sisters, and she'll tell you about seeing Irish culture celebrated around the world.
I was always the one in class making fun of the teacher, because someone had to.
Q, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app, or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
The transition to civilian life is often difficult for veterans, but the Cordon Bleu cooking school in Ottawa has a plan to help. How to find life after the military and what working in a kitchen and the Canadian Forces have in common is coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. There is an alarming rise in deepfake pornography targeting young Canadians. Deepfakes are created using artificial intelligence, altering real photos to make them explicit. As Ellen Morrow reports, Canadian law enforcement agencies say the cases can be very difficult to investigate.
These were the messages that I got.
16-year-old Ruby was targeted with an explicit deepfake. Someone she didn't know took a fully clothed photo she had posted on social media and used AI to make Ruby appear topless.
There was nothing I could do to prevent it. It just happened. And then I was filled with a lot of anger.
The Canadian Centre for Child Protection describes deepfake porn as a growing threat. 4,000 of these images were reported to the centre last year alone. Lindsay Lobb is a director there.
Because of the availability of these tools that are often even made available for free, this has continued to grow and evolve and continue to be a problem.
The altered images are considered child pornography, but investigating them can be challenging, with unknown perpetrators sometimes operating outside of Canada.
It's definitely by far the most complex type of investigations.
Corporal Heather Bangle is with Alberta's Internet Child Exploitation Unit. She says deepfakes are being used to extort minors for money.
The more I learn about AI and deepfakes, this is going to be a nightmare.
Someone who I do not know has this picture of me where I really do look naked.
But as far as Ruby knows, the deepfake of her was never posted publicly. Her goal now, raising awareness.
What's still being taught around cybersecurity, to be safe, don't take nude photos. But now it's an entirely other ballgame.
Ellen Morrow, CBC News, Toronto.
You can see Ellen's full report tonight on The National or stream it on The National's YouTube page. It is also one of the most read stories right now on our main page at cbcnews.ca. The European Union's foreign policy chief says the EU should follow the United States and allow Ukraine to use weapons to strike deep inside Russia. Here is Joseph Borrell.
I continue believing this is what has to be done. I hope member states will agree on that.
France is one of the EU's biggest military powers. It says it will consider also allowing Ukraine to hit targets inside Russia. But Ukrainian MP Maria Yanova told the BBC her country needs more.
Missiles are not the silver bullet against our common enemies. When we are talking about this permission, yes, we appreciate, but that will not bring a victory, as we really need strategy, and that is why air shield above Ukraine, more trainings, more Western military instructors in Ukraine.
The Kremlin says if Western weapons are fired deep into Russia, that will usher in a new round of tension, and Russia will treat it as though NATO has directly joined the war. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has a packed agenda today in Rio de Janeiro. He is there for the start of the G20 summit, and there are some important issues to discuss as he sits down for one-on-one meetings with global leaders. Karina Roman has the details.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau will have bilateral meetings today with the leaders of Mexico, Italy, the UK, Japan, and the US. There's no shortage of issues to talk about. First on the agenda for the meeting with Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum will likely be the impending renegotiation of the Canada-US-Mexico Free Trade Agreement, especially considering Trudeau has not ruled out cutting Mexico out of talks if it doesn't come on side with tariffs on China-made electric vehicles. Ukraine will be top of mind for sit-downs with Italy, the UK, and of course the US, as they wonder whether the reported decision by the US to lift restrictions that had blocked Ukraine from using weapons provided by the US to strike deeper into Russian territory will buy Ukraine enough time to make headway in the war before Donald Trump possibly reverses the new policy once in the White House. When Trudeau meets with U.S. President Joe Biden, they will likely also talk about how to prepare for a Trump presidency and the conflict in the Middle East. But it might also be a moment of farewell, much like when Trudeau and Barack Obama met at the G20 in 2016. Except at that time, Trudeau was the new face, and now he is a veteran at the summit table. Karina Roman, CBC News, Rio de Janeiro.
Donald Trump continues to build his cabinet as he prepares to re-enter the Oval Office next year. The president-elect has been raising eyebrows with some of the choices for his administration, but Trump does not appear to be backing down. He's adding even more controversial names to his list of key advisors. The CBC's Richard Madden joins me now from Washington. And Richard, it seems that Donald Trump is continuing to make some appointments that many are calling questionable. What is the latest?
Yeah, some of them are definitely raising eyebrows, as you said, but I suspect that's by design since Donald Trump promised to shake up the system if he won the election. Now, his latest pick, Brendan Carr to head the Federal Communications Commission. That's basically America's version of the CRTC. It regulates licenses for TV, radio, and internet pricing. Now, Carr is a big critic of big tech, saying he wants to dismantle Google, Apple, and Microsoft for censoring free speech. Carr is also friends with Trump ally Elon Musk and recently blasted the agency for denying some $900 million in subsidies for Musk's Starlink company. But compared to the other nominees, Carr's confirmation could be one of the smoother ones. Here's House Speaker Mike Johnson.
This is what I'll say about the nominees that the president has put forward, is that they are persons who will shake up the status quo. And I think what the American people have believe and what they've delivered with the mandate in this election is a demand that we shake up the status quo. It's not working for the American people.
Now, President-elect Trump has already suggested networks ABC, NBC, and CBS should lose their broadcast licenses for being unfair to him. And if that's the case, Brendan Carr would be in charge of pulling the plug.
What is Trump saying about his other controversial picks?
Yeah, it's full steam ahead. Trump is reportedly not backing down. His defense pick, Fox News' Pete Hegseth, is accused of paying a woman who accused him of sexual assault in a settlement. His attorney general, Matt Gaetz, accused of having an affair with a minor. Tulsi Gabbard under scrutiny for being friends with dictators and siding with some of America's adversaries. Now, these three nominees appear to be careening towards a major confirmation clash in the Senate among Republicans, and it could be a major test of Trump's intentions when he takes office.
Thank you, Richard.
Thanks.
The CBC's Richard Madden in Washington. Workers at the zoo in New Delhi use hoses to spray down the animal enclosures. They're concerned the smog is making it hard for them to breathe. The air in the city is thick and toxic. Schools have been closed and construction has been stopped. India's government also says it's limited the number of trucks going into the capital as the air quality worsens. Data from Swiss group IQ Air shows New Delhi ranking as the most polluted city in the world. It says the concentration of hazardous matter in the air could cause cardiac issues and disease. A coroner's inquest begins today into the death of a black man in Ottawa. He died after a violent altercation with police 8 years ago. As this inquest starts, there are growing concerns among lawmakers and others. It's being held virtually, and the trend has some questioning the process. CBC's Guy Kenville explains.
I certainly had some misgivings about it, and I expressed those.
Lawrence Greenspan is the lawyer for the family of Abdi Rahman Abdi, a black man who struggled with mental health issues and whose 2016 death, a day after his violent arrest by police officers, sparked outrage in Ottawa and beyond. Greenspan is used to addressing juries in person, so when he learned the weeks-long inquest into Abdi's death would take place by video conference,
it struck me as being a process that it was foreign to me. But
the Abdi inquest is one of 4 that Ontario's Office of the Chief Coroner has scheduled for the rest of this year, and they're all slated to be virtual. The coroner's office says that allows juries to hear from the best expert witnesses, no matter where they live, and also for the full participation of families. But Mackenzie Peterson says her recent experience with a virtual inquest was isolating and impersonal.
That would have been filled. My dad had so many friends and family that loved him and wanted to be there.
Peterson's father was shot by Hamilton police in 2020. She was looking forward to seeing the officers in person, but she says her camera was turned off during the inquest earlier this month until her grandmother Lucy complained and said,
"Hey, look, if this was happening in the courtroom, you couldn't block our faces. So why are you blocking us from turning the camera on?"
Greenspan says he's willing to give the online format a chance, but hopes it runs smoothly. Guy Kenville, CBC News, Ottawa.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. You're on CBC this Monday morning, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or on YouTube. This half hour on the program, I hate to say it, but we're going to continue sounding a little bit glum because the Bombers lost the Grey Cup, and we're going to take you to BC. CBC Manitoba's Mike Arsenault covered the game, and we're going to find out more about what it feels like in BC this morning and what the game felt like last night in Vancouver, and who we talked to, from players to fans. So stay tuned. In addition, this half hour on the program, we are going to be hearing about something that you might have been thinking about. I know that I certainly have. Signing up for a subscription. That part, super easy. But what about canceling a subscription? It can be a nightmare. You probably know that. We're going to hear about how there's new rules in the United States that could help us here in Canada. Right now, Heather Wells is in with headlines.
Good morning. Well, a Manitoba family is looking for answers after a mother and her 8-year-old daughter were killed in a crash. Sarah and Alexa Unger died after a semi-trailer hit their SUV Friday at a highway intersection near Altona. RCMP believe the driver of the semi failed to stop at a stop sign before crashing into the SUV. So a robot walks into a clinic. Robots are helping people in rural and remote places access more physiotherapy and rehabilitation services. The pilot project connects people with healthcare workers in Winnipeg. We're going to hear where it's available and how it's being received coming up in our next local news at 8:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
I'm waiting for the joke part of it.
I know. I don't have the final.
You got me interested, though. That's the whole point. I love it. It is right now time to get into what's going on in the weather forecast. Abby.
We're looking at mostly calm conditions with the sun and cloud making its presence felt today, though we still have that winter storm watch in effect, which begins sometime tonight and really getting into swing tomorrow, bringing rain, freezing rain, snow, and strong winds across western Manitoba. So be prepared for snowy and blizzard-like conditions. Right now, Winnipeg, we are at -1. It is clear outside. We will see a mix of sun and clouds throughout the day. Conditions will remain light, and then we warm up to a high of 5. Up north, we're seeing cloudy conditions and light southwest winds. Highs will be around 1 for both Thompson and Churchill. While down south, that mix of sun and clouds will be the menu for today with light winds. And we'll see highs between 2 and 6 degrees for Gimli, Steinbach, and Morris. Most of these regions hovering near -3 at this point. Once again, I just want to mention that winter storm watch is in effect for western Manitoba starting tomorrow, bringing that low pressure system, and it will quickly change to freezing rain and snow. So get ready for some snowy weather to arrive tomorrow. Though today, a mix of sun and clouds, a high of 5.
I put on my little propane gas fire pit in the yard on Friday night, I think, when it was pretty calm outside, and really enjoyed that. You know, we can't complain about the fall we've had at all. It's been really lovely.
No complaint from this one.
Yeah, right? So we are taking that turn, though, as Abby said, today and for this week. It's also causing some challenges out there on the highways, as you can imagine. So Corey's in with that.
Yeah, most of those challenges, at least this morning, are up in Thompson. So whether you're heading west towards Lynn Lake or east towards Gillam, those highways there are being reported as covered, as well as poor visibility. So you might be a little bit more slippery than normal, as well as poor visibility. So just heads up there if you are traveling from Thompson to Gillam or Thompson to Lynn Lake this morning. Down south, not too many issues that I've heard of at all this morning. Even got a call from Thomas who said the Highway 16 from Russell, to Minnedosa is clear, and I told him to enjoy it while it lasts, because in about a day or two's time, it's going to look a lot different. So just heads up there, folks. In the next few days, those highways are going to be gnarly, particularly in western Manitoba, as that weather comes through. If you see anything going on out there today, tomorrow, the next few days, write this number down so you can let me know what you're seeing. That number, 204-788-3093.
Well, it was not meant to be. A devastating loss for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers last night. It wasn't even close. The Blue and Gold lost the Grey Cup championship game. They went in as the heavy favorites to the Toronto Argonauts, especially because Toronto's quarterback was out after being injured last week. But we lost. Winnipeg lost by a score of 41-24, continuing the Grey Cup losing streak now because this is the third time. Now, this is an especially upsetting loss for the team, which was, as I mentioned, heavily favored heading into last night. CBC spoke to Bomber fans outside the stadium in Vancouver after the game. Here's a bit of what they had to say.
A lousy game. You know what? We never showed up. Claris had a bad game. I don't know. It was ours for the taking. With a quarterback out, it was ours. I don't know. This year's been like that. We've been hot and cold. So, I don't know. Give it another chance, I think we'd have won it. Next week, we played them again, we'd win.
You know what? It was a really fun time. It's a really great game. It's fun to come out to the Grey Cup. Doesn't matter who wins. But, yeah, bummer that Blue didn't come through tonight.
Yeah. We were hoping to take the cup home with us.
Yeah. On our backs.
And to take advantage of the quarterback being injured and everything like that.
Well, that's what I thought. That it was going to be a good match, and it was a good match until the end, eh?
So always a Bomber fan. It's my mother and my first Grey Cup together, and we're always going to be Bombers fans.
And how do you feel now, both of you?
Sad. Yeah.
But we're going to go back and keep cheering for them.
Definitely. Absolutely. Lifers. Go Blue! We
Go
love
Blue.
you!
Go Blue!
Yay!
CBC's Mike Arsenault is in Vancouver and joins us live. He's been there for the whole weekend covering the game and the events. And good morning to you.
Good morning. How you doing?
I'm all right. There's a bit of a feeling in Winnipeg right now that's a little bit like muted, shall I say. What was the atmosphere like outside of BC Place after the game?
After the game, I was on the field watching Toronto celebrate their win, so I didn't really get to talk to many fans directly after the game. But a couple hours later, after all the player interviews and stuff were over, I did manage to bump into a couple fans, and I mean, it's simple. They were disappointed, kind of like the clips you just played before I got on here. Like they felt they said they thought we got out coached, and they were disappointed that Brady Oliveira, I think he had 11 touches for 84 yards, and they were just disappointed he wasn't involved more in the game. And he was averaging 7.4 yards a carry. So I'm not going to say I don't disagree with them, but overall just disappointment. But then just Bomber fans, and I think Winnipeg sports fans, they're just so, we're so loyal to the soil. So, I mean, they were even like, we're still going to cheer for the Bombers, and we're going to win it next year in Winnipeg. So always ever the optimists, us Winnipeg sports fans. But yeah, definitely disappointment too.
When did people feel the game started to go south? I had a fan on about last hour, Mike, and he was saying that, it was hard to tell for him. He felt like it was pretty good up to the fourth quarter. And then obviously Caleros cutting his finger was a huge deal. But other people saying that pop wasn't there from the start. Lots of turnovers. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, it's easy for me to armchair coach now.
Yeah, with respect, of course, all of us.
Exactly. But during the game, I thought the halftime, it wasn't the big score that I thought maybe we would run up early, but it felt competitive. And I was like, it's the Grey Cup. It's a tight game. It's 10-9. We're in the lead. And when the Bombers came out in the second half, I think for me, I thought there was a few plays that really turned the tides and started to give Toronto the upper hand, and it was the lucky Whitehead fumble, and I don't want to put it on him, but that punt return fumble, we never really recovered after that.
And how odd, because he had a similar fumble, although we did recover from the defense, which was amazing in last week's Western Final. So it was just same kind of fumble in a way.
Yeah, exactly. And then there was another one was that the punt block penalty.
Yeah.
And that just, that was heartbreaking. And you could feel the air kind of get sucked out of the stadium when that happened.
And just for the sake of people listening that didn't tune into the game, or maybe not football fans, I mean, let's just imagine the Bombers make a great play and you think the momentum's going to change, and then they have to pull it back because there's a penalty flag on the play and we don't, in fact, get the ball. So let's talk about some of the things outside of the game, because, of course, you were also there to cover Canadians connecting through the CFL, and there was a lot of connection. What's the Backyard Street Festival?
So outside the Backyard Street Festival, it's they block off a bunch of streets all around BC Place. And I mean, they have live music and, people dancing and food trucks. It was a really fun atmosphere. There was probably hundreds, if not thousands of fans out there, and not just Bomber fans and Argonaut fans. One thing you kind of learn about these going to the Grey Cup and these CFL Grey Cup events is just how many fans there are from every team at this game, regardless if their team is in the game or not. And they don't just dress to cater to the teams in the game. They'll just support their home team and go. And actually their home team sometimes dictates like who they're cheering for. Like you speak to a Rider fan, they're like, I can't cheer for Winnipeg today, or other people being like a Ticats fan telling me they can't cheer for Toronto because there's this Ontario rivalry. So, but overall, like there was a lot of excitement, and not every fan I spoke to, but a lot of the fans I spoke to outside in the morning, they all thought the Bombers were going to win. And it was because of the obvious things, like Toronto has a backup quarterback in, and Winnipeg has a really strong offense. So I think everybody was a little surprised, even the people who were cheering for the Argonauts.
Yeah, you get that hungry backup quarterback, though, that doesn't expect to be in the big game, and all of a sudden he's in the big game, and he puts on a performance like that, and you're not going to take it away from him. So, I mean, so much excitement as well for the fans that were there cheering for Toronto, and then that halftime show. I heard you had a pretty good seat for the Jonas Brothers at halftime.
Yeah, as luck would have it, I was kind of walking around on the field level right at halftime, and then this sort of crowd of people got ushered onto the field, and I just joined, and I was pretty close for the Jonas Brothers concert. It was pretty fun to watch. A lot of those songs are they're radio, pop radio hits, so I recognize them from just commuting and stuff.
Super fun. What about the mood overall inside the game? I know I've been lucky enough to catch a Grey Cup in BC, and it's quite a venue, isn't it?
Their venue's like, it's a really nice stadium. It's like, it's covered. So you're not, the weather was okay yesterday, but even if it wasn't, you knew we weren't going to get rained on or anything. But the crowd was really into the game. And, when you looked into the crowd, it looked like a lot of BC Lion fans, just because obviously it's in Vancouver and a lot of those folks showed up. But man, you could really hear the Argonaut fans when they started making big plays. And I mean, early on, you could hear it in the Bombers too, but we didn't make a lot of big plays in the end. But they really showed up to support their team.
So this is the third straight Grey Cup loss for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. What was the tone like right after the loss, but also in the locker room with some of the players after the loss?
Oh, you can see the heartbreak on their faces and hear it in their voices. It's sad. You feel bad for them. Like, this is something they've worked for their whole lives. It's it's the big goal. And that's kind of the polar opposite of sports, right? You got these two teams going in, one is going to accomplish the goal of a lifetime, and one is going to have a really heartbreaking defeat. And and so, coach like Mike O'Shea and Zach Caleros, they do their podium sort of post-game comments, and it's really somber in the room, and you can tell they're hurting from the third loss. And then after they're done, Dinwiddie comes in, and man, you can hear him down the hallway. He's so excited, like the polar opposite of feelings. Like he's like, I'll be right there. Like the guys are smoking stogies, and it was just like you could tell they were really enjoying the win. And so to your point, for a guy like Arbuckle, he had his family and his wife on the podium during the post game, and you were happy for that guy. It was hard to be completely heartbroken because you see this guy accomplish a dream when he probably thought that time had passed. So there's some, you can appreciate that. It's not totally heartbreaking, but as a Bomber fan, it was my stomach hurt.
And of course, the sort of strange irony to all of this, for those of you that aren't sort of Bomber history nerds, is Kevin Glenn broke his arm going to the Grey Cup for the Bombers. Remember that story back in the day? So he breaks his arm, and then who was the backup quarterback in the Grey Cup for us that year? It was Ryan Dinwiddie, who won with Toronto last night. So we didn't win that Grey Cup with Dinwiddie coming in. So it was just, I thought, ironic. He probably could have that conversation, right, with the quarterback last night for Toronto, saying, I've been there. Because what are the chances that he would have been there? But he has.
Yeah, why did he do that for us? He should have got us to win.
I know. But all right, have a safe, probably maybe quieter flight home than you would have had with the Bomber fans going down. But thanks for being with us, Mike.
Well, thanks, Marcy. My pleasure.
That's the CBC's Mike Arsenault. It's a post-game live Grey Cup debrief. He is still in Vancouver.
We carry a world of information in our pockets because we want to know. Breaking news that shapes our world. Staying on top of stories around the globe. And connected close to home. It's news you can trust. Delivered when you want and where you want. On Canada's News app. Now with CBC Radio 1. Local and live. Download the CBC News app for free.
8:25 is the time right now. And speaking of downloading and subscribing, it's easy to do. But what if you want to stop something like a streaming channel, a news service, a free trial for a meal kit? I mean, you name it. Once you're in, it can be really hard to stop a subscription. Every month, you might just keep getting dinged. Now, in the United States, regulators just told companies no more of this. So could that mean canceling in Canada will get easier? CBC's Jennifer Keane went to find out.
Janice Grayowski has signed up for a lot of subscriptions.
I've had Apple, I've had Crave. At my peak, I probably had a dozen, and now I'm...
Earlier this year, though, she decided to cut back, starting with her newspaper.
I just wasn't reading it, right? Like, I read a lot of news, and there's so many different sources these days.
But she couldn't cancel it online. She had to call a 1-800 number and talk to a sales rep.
And their first response was, well, we'll give you a deal. You know, it's 50% off now. And I go, well, no, thank you. And they go, oh, well, we'll give it to you even cheaper. And then it was like, no, I'm not reading it.
Signing up for a subscription? Easy peasy. Canceling one? Not so much.
This is a frustration that almost everybody has at one time or another.
James Combe is with the Federal Trade Commission, or FTC. It just introduced a new rule in the U.S. called Click to Cancel. It makes two big changes that are good for consumers. First, American companies will have to be more transparent about negative billing. That's when your free trial automatically turns into a paid subscription. And maybe more importantly,
you have to provide a method of cancellation that is as simple as it was to sign up and in the same media that one signed up in. If you signed up on the internet, you have to be able to cancel on the internet. If you sign up by phone, you have to be able to cancel by phone.
Companies that don't do this could face big fines. And here's the good news. It might make things easier for Canadians.
Absolutely. Anybody who's selling in the United States, no matter whom they're selling to, is covered by this rule. So if you are selling from the United States or into the United States, you're covered by the rule.
So if a company's customers are mostly south of the border, it will probably just play by the U.S. rules. But what about getting our own click to cancel rule? John Lawford is with the Public Interest Advocacy Centre. He says, that might be tricky. Consumer protection laws in Canada are scattered between the feds and the provinces, and they don't have the same mandate as the FTC Act.
Basically, Section 5 of that act says that business has to be done in a fair way in the U.S. We don't have that in Canada. You can do unfair business here. I know that businesses would take issue with that, but it's true.
Canada's Competition Bureau can crack down on false or misleading advertising, but subscriptions that are hard to cancel may not meet that bar.
So unless there's a very particular regulator or law that's covering their sector, these kinds of practices are just, unless they rise to an unconscionable business practice or otherwise violate the general civil law, it's allowed.
Now, that doesn't mean that Canadian companies couldn't just make it easier to cancel subscriptions, even without being forced to.
I'm hoping that this will become the way of doing business online, and they will just start to copy this in other jurisdictions, whether there's a rule for it or not.
John Lawford says we can dare to dream.
But it's no guarantee that your favorite website will all of a sudden start having an easy unsubscribe mechanism.
Okay, so maybe just think twice before signing up for that free trial. I'm Jennifer Keene.
That is from the Cost of Living. If you want to check out their podcast, you can check it out Tuesday mornings at 11:30 here on the radio, by the way. Sorry to hear the show, but you can also check out their podcast wherever you subscribe, ironically enough. Let's talk about something you might want to do today. We're hoping you do. If you go to Red River College, please say hello to our CBC team. CBC Manitoba's Communities in Focus it's a look. Usually we're out and about different neighborhoods outside rurally in Manitoba up to this point, but we're turning our attention inside Winnipeg. So we begin Communities in Focus at Red River College today, and it runs through November 29th. So head down to the Notre Dame campus, library hallway, main level, and that is where we're going to be setting up shop. And please say hello. There's a welcome event today between 11 and 1. Right now, let's go to our CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it's partly cloudy, -1 right now in Winnipeg. A high today of 5 with a mix of sun and clouds. And then the weather gets serious tomorrow with a winter storm watch in effect for western Manitoba. In Winnipeg, it will be rain. A family in southern Manitoba is grieving the loss of a mother and her 8-year-old daughter. Sarah and Alexa Unger died after a semi-trailer crashed into their SUV on Friday at a highway intersection near Altona. Pete and Susan Unger are Sarah's parents-in-law and Alexa's grandparents. They say the mother and daughter were on their way back from grocery shopping.
She was only 35 years old.
Lots of life left on her.
She left a 10-year-old boy behind.
And a very good marriage they had, a loving home, and now he has to live with this all his life.
RCMP believe the driver of the semi failed to stop at a stop sign before crashing into the SUV. No charges have been laid, but police say they are expected. The trial of 2 men accused of smuggling migrants across the Canada-U.S. border begins today in Minnesota. The men are charged in the freezing deaths of an Indian family, a couple and their 2 young children, in January 2022. Officials say the men would take people from India, bring them into Canada, walking them from Manitoba across the U.S. border. The men have pleaded not guilty to several charges in the U.S., including causing bodily injury and conspiracy to transport aliens. Well, smoked by the big smoke.
For the second time in 3 years, Toronto is the Grey Cup champion.
The Toronto Argonauts beating the Winnipeg Blue Bombers 41-24 last night on TSN in Vancouver. For the Bombers, it is the 3rd straight Grey Cup loss. Winnipeg quarterback Zach Collaros says those losses hurt every time.
There's just so many people in the locker room that you care for, you develop deep bonds with, put in a lot of time, a lot of work together. So to not have it go your way, in the ultimate game is obviously tough.
Collaros injured a finger on his throwing hand in the third quarter, followed by throwing 3 interceptions. This is the first time a team has lost the CFL's big game 3 games in a row, 3 times in a row since the Montreal Alouettes in the 1950s. Now, Winnipeg Blue Bomber fans are trying to find a bright side to last night's loss.
It was good. It was still fun. We had a great time. BC's a great place. This indoor stadium is nice this time of year.
You know what? It was a really fun time. It's a really great game. It's fun to come out to the Grey Cup. Doesn't matter who wins, but bummer that Blue didn't come through tonight.
Yeah, we were hoping to take the cup home with us.
Yeah. On our backs.
It doesn't matter who's playing in the CFL Grey Cup. It's all about Canada getting together and celebrating a great sport.
And next year, Canada will be celebrating a great sport right here in Winnipeg. This city hosts the 112th Grey Cup. Another long stretch of parliamentary gridlock is in store for MPs in Ottawa this week. House business will continue to be stymied over a Conservative privilege motion, which dates back now to late September. Also not moving this morning is the mail. The strike by 55,000 Canadian postal workers continues into a 4th day after Canada Post failed to reach a contract with Cup W. Labour Minister Steve McKinnon is ruling out early federal intervention, although he recently ordered binding arbitration in labour disputes at the ports in Montreal and BC. Robots are helping people in rural and remote places access more physiotherapy and rehabilitation services. The pilot project connects people with healthcare workers in Winnipeg. It is available in Pinemutang and Lake Manitoba First Nations, also Ashern and Eriksdale. Instead of a face, a 3-foot-tall robot has a screen that lets the physiotherapist be there virtually. The robot can also move and rotate to get different angles. 78-year-old Dwayne Moore was a little surprised his physiotherapist wasn't there in person at the last appointment in Lake Manitoba, but
you don't really have to go and see him now. You got the video in front of you, which is helping the traveling, and that helps in the cost, of traveling back and forth. And now that with the gas so high, and being right at home here, even better.
The program is a collaboration between the Interlake Eastern Health Authority and the University of Manitoba, as well as Riverview Health Centre. You can read more about it on our website, where you can also find more Manitoba news updated throughout the day, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you, Heather, for the morning.
You're welcome.
So, Abby, we need good weather tonight. I'm heading down to the convention center. There's a dinner for 1,000 people. I am helping out to MC, as I have in the past. This is for Holy Name's House of Peace, and they give back to community in various ways. It's a nonprofit, non-denominational group, but they have a drop-in, and they also have women that live there that otherwise would have no other safe places to live as they arrive in Winnipeg for various reasons. So, a lot of us are going to be dressed up heading to the dinner, and the question is, we need layers, an umbrella, or what?
Well, we just have a mix of sun and clouds for today. Light winds in most of the region. It's just going to be more like a cooler temperatures towards that period. So yeah, you should be fine. Just dress accordingly. But just remember, we have that winter storm watch in effect, bringing that low pressure into the area, which would affect from Portage and Main all the way down to Altona. So for folks in that region, just expect snowy weather arriving tomorrow. But for tonight, it's going to be more like in the overnight period, freezing rain, that we should be expecting.
Yep. So southwestern Manitoba, if you've got an event tonight, you're going to really want to pay attention. That is it. That's all for everybody this morning. On behalf of myself, Kevin Nipatebo, Corey Funk, Abby Adeyemi, Heather Wiles, Megan Ketcherson, and Joni Nicolo, as well as our live team of associate producers and our leaders in unit, Nellie Gonzalez and Leif Larson. This has been Information Radio on CBC. Take care.